good morning to you. A very special day here in South Africa. It's Youth Day 1976 when we look back at what was a very special time in our history. If you've just joined us, I'm with Rene West. Rene West is with me, as well as Kendall Machamati manning the sports desk. We'll be taking you through the next couple of hours on this special Youth Day here in South Africa. Lots of celebrations around the country, of course. We'll be stopping off all over the country, and we're asking you this question today. Is the youth of 2016 conscious of the importance of June 16? June 16, not June 2016, that is. June 16. Very important day in our history. Do we understand black consciousness, the context of black consciousness within this day, and where this has brought us? That is our question for you today on this very day. We'll be around the country shortly to give you a kind of wrap-up of proceedings and what you can look forward to. Also, lots of terrific content looking back, but also looking forward. Speaking to various different stakeholders, we'll also talk about forgiveness today. But let's go to Rene West, who's on the news desk this morning for our first news update.
Today marks the 40th anniversary commemoration of the June 16 Soweto uprisings. President Jacob Zuma will address the main Youth Day ceremony at Orlando Stadium in Soweto. Convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius will know in 3 weeks' time if he's going back to jail. And the main location of wreckage from the Egypt airplane that crashed in the eastern Mediterranean last month has been identified by a deep ocean sea vessel. Well, let's go over to Kendall Machamate, who has the sports news. Very good morning to you, Kendall, and to Urban.
Good morning to the both of you.
Good morning for us.
Yeah.
Great win last night for South Africa.
Awesome wins for South Africa. But before I get too far into that, it is 40 years since this is the 40th anniversary of June 16. Fantastic stuff. My sister was 8 days old. My mother tells me I was only a couple of years old myself, and she almost got gassed to death in these uprisings. So it holds a special significance to all of us, and me personally as well. Good morning. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
And that should do it for Hashim Amla.
Hashim Amla and Imran Tahir lead them Battle Proteas to a bonus point 139-run victory over hosts West Indies.
That's it, Tahir. 7 wickets. Best ever one-day figures for South Africa.
Zane Davids laid ownership to that. The little stab through from Jackson. And now Bosch has got it. It's going to be another score for South Africa. Another major step towards the semi-finals.
The Junior Springboks beat their French counterparts by 40 points to 31 to book a spot in the semi-finals of the Under-20 World Cup against host England.
And Gignac can run for the hills here, or indeed run for goal. And Payet is supporting. Dimitri Payet seals it!
France leave it late to seal a win against Albania with a wonder goal by Payet.
Dimitri Payet is the man! Love you, Dad. The whole of France loves him.
That is what we've got for you in the sports data on today. Be sure to stick around for all of it. It is a special day for all of us here in South Africa. But for now, it's back to the main desk for the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. Government's strides to empower and give hope to young people will be highlighted when President Jacob Zuma delivers the National Youth Day commemoration speech at Orlando Stadium in Soweto. Today marks exactly 40 years since the tragic June 16 student uprisings, which claimed the lives of hundreds of protesting youth. The theme of this year's National Youth Day is Youth Moving South Africa Forward. President Jacob Zuma will address the main ceremony. He will be accompanied by his deputy, Cyril Ramaphosa. Yesterday, President Zuma urged the youth to see June 16th as an inspiration for them to defend their freedom and to help build the country. Today's national event will be broadcast live on Channel 404 and SABC 1. Parties are going all out to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the student uprisings. The parties will be honouring the leaders of the student uprising, but also highlighting the different challenges facing today's youth. The DA, led by Musi Maimane, will be marching in the streets of Soweto to put the spotlight on access to quality and affordable education and employment. Economic freedom fighters leader Julius Malema will address a rally at Mbalenhle in Secunda, recommitting the party to their mission of economic freedom in our lifetime. The IFP will honour some of the students who come from Soweto, with President Buthelezi addressing the crowd under the theme "A voice of reason is needed to secure our democracy." Smaller parties are also going all out, with Azapo visiting the Heroes Acre at Avalon Cemetery, where Soweto student uprising leaders Tietse Mashinini and Gogetso Sihlolo are buried, while the APC will be in Langa in Cape Town. Now, let's go over to Eben, who has more on the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rene. 2016, of course, marks the 40th anniversary of the 1976 youth uprising, which saw young people in Soweto lay down their lives in the fight against then apartheid government for freedom and the creation of a democratic state that we all celebrate today. Now, the theme for this Youth Month for this year is Youth Moving South Africa Forward. It implies an action-orientated approach that recognises the role that young people of South Africa have played and are still playing to continue to move the country forward. The commemoration of Youth Day, June 16, will be led by the Department of Arts and Culture with the support of the National Youth Development Agency. President Jacob Zuma will deliver the keynote address a little bit later today. Now, for the latest, let's go to Orlando Stadium. Of course, this is where that march in 1976 was going to end, was at the Orlando Stadium. Criselda Lewis is right in the middle of Orlando Stadium. Very good morning to you, Criselda. It looks like it's slowly picking up there. Just set the scene for us.
Well, a very good morning to you here, live from the Orlando Stadium here in Soweto. Sowetans wake up this morning to commemorate and to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the 1976 Soweto uprising. Of course, celebrating and commemorating those thousands who took to the streets, those thousands of students who took to the streets so bravely to demonstrate against the apartheid government and the use of Afrikaans as the medium of instructions in schools. And subsequently what we saw was hundreds of them being mowed down by apartheid police. So certainly here we wake up this morning to remember them and to look at exactly how far we've come when it comes to youth development. What exactly has been done in South Africa to uplift the youth of this country? Certainly while we celebrate those achievements, we certainly look at some of the challenges, some of the similarities perhaps of the challenges that were faced in 1976 and the challenges that are faced today, and also some of the new challenges as well. If we look, for example, at the number of child-headed households due to the scourge of HIV and AIDS, certainly those are some of the issues that need to be addressed. The high unemployment rate amongst youth, as well as opportunities that can be given to young people. President Jacob Zuma, who will address this, basically the celebration here a little bit later on this morning. We're expecting him to touch quite largely on those particular issues. But let's take a look at perhaps what will be taking place here today. We're expecting many of the Sowetans and people from other parts of the Johannesburg area and perhaps other parts of the country to also come and fill up the stadium to commemorate those of 1976. Let's go now to my colleague, Tumaule Muhlaudi, who's on another side of the stadium, and he'll tell us if people are really starting to stream in at this point. A very good morning to you, Tumaule.
Well, thank you very much. Well, outside the stadium here at Orlando Stadium, it's been a hive of activity right from the wee hours of the morning, as the security detail as well as the marshals, which have been brought here to guide and basically control the multitudes which are expected to converge on Orlando Stadium when the official program kicks off here at the stadium. This will be happening at around 11 o'clock this morning, according to the program. And before I go into the program and the details thereof, I can just paint a picture of what's been happening around the stadium precinct. I already mentioned that the marshals have been busy since the wee hours of this morning, making sure that everything is in place as they anticipate a large number of people who are going to be here for the June 16 celebrations. Now, I'm going to step out of shot just to paint you a picture. You can see just down towards the west of the stadium, traffic is being tightly controlled there by various law enforcement authorities, including the Johannesburg Metro Police as well as the SAPS. I can tell you that there have been various motorcades coming in as the various dignitaries arrive to the Orlando Stadium, and the traffic is being very tightly controlled. Coming back into shot now, motorists are also being guided to a special sweeping area whereby the vehicles are obviously checked, and the police and various other security officials make sure that the vehicles that will be granted access to the Orlando Stadium are, of course, security cleared and are allowed to come and park here at the particular venues that have been set up here at the stadium. So that's the mood that's happening right now. It's just basically preparing before the VIPs as they are making their way to the stadium. Program kicks off at about 11, and of course that will be the keynote speaker will be President Jacob Zuma, and he will be introduced by the Arts Minister Nathi Mthethwa and various other dignitaries, including the Mayor Park Stow of Johannesburg. And with that, it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much to Tumole Mutlaori. As you can see, it's still a little bit empty there at Orlando Stadium. The mood is picking up, though. You saw Griselda Lewis there doing a walk and talk around the stadium. We expect the stadium to really fill up in the next couple of hours. The official program is, supposed to start at 11, but these things can always run over time a little bit, as there's so many security details and other measures that have to be put into place. Of course, we're asking you the question today, the question regarding to June 16, 1976. We're asking you, do the youth of today, are they conscious of the importance of today, June 16? That's the question we're asking you today. But let's go over to Renee for more.
Thank you, Eben. Government is pulling all the stops to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the 1976 student uprising. President Jacob Zuma has appointed a 15-member inter-ministerial committee chaired by the Minister in the Presidency for Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Jeff Radebe, to organize the event. June 16th is a public holiday to commemorate the bravery displayed by the young people when they challenged the apartheid government for imposing Afrikaans as a medium of instruction in schools. A peaceful march from Orlando West to the nearby Orlando Stadium ended violently when police opened fire on unarmed and defenseless students. President Jacob Zuma will deliver a keynote address at the main commemoration event at Orlando Stadium in Soweto today. SABC reporter Nozintombi Mia spoke to Minister in the Presidency for Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation.
1976, we saw a loveless body of Hector Peterson, Hastings Ndlovu, and later Hotso Siachul. So the bravery of the youth of 1976 is inspiring the youth of today that what they fought for has now been achieved. Can you imagine that in 1976 they were fighting for basic education? But today the ANC government is providing largely free education in many schools. In higher institutions of higher learning, up more than 9.2 billion rand every year is being pumped for students to get bursaries and loans. So this means that the government today is responding positively to the challenges that the youth of 1976 could only dream of.
And the youth of 1976 played such a vital role in our democracy. It really was one of the watershed moments in the timeline towards us reaching our democratic freedom. And what do you have to say in terms of that?
Well, 1976 was a watershed moment because the history of South Africa before June 16, 1976 and after that has never been the same again. It put the plight of apartheid into the global spotlight. Ever since then, the anti-apartheid movement moved from strength to strength. That's why 27 April 1994 happened.
And we can see with all the activity that's happening that things are about to start now with the wreath-laying ceremony. How significant is that to you, just briefly?
Well, I think it evokes emotions that today all those sacrifices were not in vain because we enjoy now a constitutional democracy.
Imagine at the tender age of 10 being solely responsible of a household. That's the reality of the life of scores of children in South Africa, a phenomenon known as child-headed households. The majority of child and youth-headed households are in KwaZulu-Natal.
Children, the epitome of innocence, requiring just love, care, protection and guidance, free to laugh and play. It's not just a privilege, but the right of every child as enshrined in the Constitution. However, in a country where poverty, crime and disease levels are high, for many children, their basic rights become a privilege and one many still don't enjoy. Shobane, south of KwaZulu-Natal. Celiwe, like many children, was forced to give up her childhood. After her mother abandoned her and her little brother, she became solely responsible for the family.
Even this house, I built it with my brother. After our mother left us, we built it so we could have a roof over our heads.
In her teens, she had 2 children, adding to her burden. For years, they lived in squalor, in a dilapidated mud house, often going to sleep on an empty stomach. Despite an outpouring of help after the SABC broadcast their plight last year, for Celiwe, the years lost she can never get back. Her challenges are similar to those of Nondumiso Hlongwa, who lives in Mandeni on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast and is responsible for her 8 siblings. They currently share this one-roomed house. She is unemployed.
Our situation is that 8 of us live in this house. 9 of us are working. We get odd jobs but are not enough. Even the area doesn't have water. There are no adults. It's just us children. Our parents died and we have no other relative.
Government is currently compiling a child and youth-headed household register. This so they can give assistance. It's estimated that there are over 3,200 child-headed households in South Africa, and the number of youth-headed households identified at just over 6,500. At this year's International Children's Day celebrations, President Jacob Zuma made a plea to South Africans, to neighbors of such households, to help. And in the words of the late President Nelson Mandela, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. Ayanda Mhlongo, SABC News, Durban.
That's your top news for now, but we'll be taking a short break. Stay tuned, because after this, we will be speaking with Adrian Vlok.
He appealed for the disruptions to come to an end so the future of the children is not compromised.
The union said the latest offer by Eskom will condemn its members to poverty.
Samples from the 2012 London Olympic Games and 2014 Sochi Winter Games will also be retested.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Hello again, welcome back. It's June 16 here in South Africa. We're celebrating Youth Day. We're looking at young people that's going to take South Africa forward. But you can't look forward if you don't look back and know where you come from. Now, once this man was a very hated figure here in South Africa, apartheid-era law and order minister. Adrian Vlok has a different mission these days. In the late 1980s, he was responsible for covert bombing operations that targeted church buildings, trade union headquarters, and he even tried to have an anti-apartheid priest killed by poisoning his underwear. That's what we know. Now, at the age of 78, Adrian Vlok seeks redemption from his past by opening his house as a refuge for the vulnerable and distributing food to poor black families. Now, as the country is commemorating 40 years since the June 16 uprising, we are joined in our Pretoria studios this morning by the former Law and Order Minister, Adrian Vlok himself, to tell us about his thoughts then, but also now. A very good morning to you, Mr. Vlok. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsroom today.
Good morning, Eben. It's an honor to be with you this morning.
Mr. Vlok, can you take us back to June 16, 1976? Where were you and what were you thinking and what was the mood like in the country, especially within government at that time?
Well, I was a parliamentary backbencher in Cape Town, living there peacefully in Acacia Park, the parliamentary little dorpie. And that morning when the news broke that the students are rioting in Soweto, we were shocked. We were concerned and we were talking amongst each other now, what is going on now? But looking back and thinking what started that day, I must say that it was for the best of South Africa and all our people that the students started with this 40 years ago. To change the whole system, to change the whole country. And this is what it has come today. Now, I would say that we were very concerned, and I think the students were at that stage, the trigger, I think, was apartheid, was Afrikaans. But I think they were really standing up against apartheid, against the whole system of apartheid. I think they were fed up with this. And it is good that it has come to an end 20 years later. But I didn't think they realized when they started that morning what was going to happen 20 years later and where we are standing now 40 years later.
There's been a lot of change in South Africa over the last 25 years. How do you view this change and how do you view the role of young people in South Africa today?
Oh, there have been many, many changes, and it was for the good. Not all of them, but the majority of changes that we have experienced over the past 20 or 40 years was for the better and for the best of South Africa and all our people. The role of young people hasn't changed in one iota or title, because, you know, their role at that stage was very important. Today, it is maybe even more important. During that time, it was for them to break down a system, something that was wrong. Today, they have to build a system, to build a new country, a new system that we are living in. Today, they don't have to burn or to destroy anything anymore. They could sit down and our government and the people of this land, they are open to build. And we must build together. So the youth, their role is so important today. If we look at them and ask them, come with us, help the old people. We should help them to build a new country that we are living in today.
I want to ask you about those days, let's call it the dark days as they were. Were you brought up to hate black people? And if that is the case, what is the thing that has changed in you today that you have these different views now?
It wasn't such a hatred for black people. But I thought myself, I regard myself as better than black people. And that is pride. And pride is a very bad thing to have. if it is channeled in the wrong way. I myself, during that time, and this is the way I was brought up, and I come from a Christian family with wonderful Christian parents, but this is the way that I've grown up. I regard myself as better than black people, and this is the way in which we conduct our lives. We were also afraid of the huge majority of black people in Africa. We did not realize and regard them also as creations of the Lord, and this is what changed me. My first wife died in 1994, and after that I turned to the Lord and I asked, why? Why did she die? And then He started to change me. Today, I am a follower of Jesus. I try to follow in His footsteps and to follow His example. And that is why I am involved in helping other people today. But it is a change that took place over a period of time. But today, I follow His guidelines. His guidelines are the Bible. And I am following this. And then He said, you must love me. Now that's the easy part, to say, I love you, Lord. But the second thing that is equally important is I must love my neighbor. I must love my brother and my sister. And that is why I am involved with an organization called Feed the Child.
Yeah.
We are feeding 10,000 children every day in South Africa. This organization, this is the food packets that we distribute in schools and in creches to have people, to help people just to have a meal.
Yeah.
And you know, even this is quite easy. Anybody of us can do this.
Yeah.
We can get involved in charity work and there to help people. You know, there's one thing that I would like to mention this morning. We have a terrible housing crisis in South Africa. Last week, when it was so cold, very cold, I was I went to Olivenhout and see the children and the people sleeping in the shacks, and it was ice cold.
Yeah.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with it. We build houses with many rooms for our children. Every child of us has a room for him or herself. But now the children in many households, they are adults. They left the house, but the rooms are still there. They are empty. I just ask, why don't we open our homes for these people that don't have anywhere to live? This will be a sacrifice from us. It will not be easy.
That would be wonderful if we could achieve that. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. Vlok, because, you know, back in those days, on the other side of the coin, I came through the last bits of the apartheid era, and we were very fearful of you, and in many ways it was a hatred towards you almost personally that we felt, if you mentioned the name Adrian Vlok. Knowing what you know today, what would you have done differently back then?
I would have, my actions against people would have been totally different. The thing that I didn't have during those days was love for people. I didn't love them in my heart, and you know, I was a hard person. I was a hard man. I was a hard man in my community. I was a hard man in my house. In my gesin, the people that my wife and my children, my family, I would have been changed. I've changed completely. I would have acted totally different. At that stage, I was I know best, and I am the man, and you must do as I tell you to do. You try to calm down a little bit, but I was hard. I would have been much softer, and I could have handled matters differently if I have known what I know today.
Mr. Vlok, thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to see the change in you. We in South Africa, we forgive you for what happened, and we hope that you can share this message with other South Africans, because we do have a problem with that hatred in South Africa today. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank
you for doing the work that you're doing now.
Thank you, my brother. But may I just say, I give all the honor and the glory to the Lord, Without him, it wouldn't have been possible. Now, I know there are people in our country who are not Christians, but you know, this is good advice for all of us. Even if you are not a Christian, love your neighbor, love your brother and your sister, and then reach out to them to build something for the future that is better than we have had 40 years ago.
Thank you very much. That is Adrian Vlok, living the change that we see in South Africa today. Forgive your brother and your sister, love your neighbor, love your brother and your sister. He says we're all connected. It's nice to hear. Imagine that was the mantra 40 years ago. We're remembering June 16. It was a dark day in our history when young people in Soweto rose up, walked down Orlando West, the main street, on their way to Orlando Stadium to protest against the use of Afrikaans, the Afrikaans language next to English at that time. The police opened fire on them, and the rest, as we all know, is history. They never reached the Orlando Stadium, I can tell you, on that day. We'll be back at the Orlando Stadium a little bit later because we're closing that journey today, 40 years later. Let's take a look now at what you can see on social media, of course. Today it's Youth Day, so we start with Youth Day, the hashtag Youth Day 2016. Today we commemorate the 40th year of the Soweto uprising, our rich history, where our forefathers took a stand for what they believed in that fateful day. We shall never forget. Now, the South African government tweeted this, which says, "Our past is still with us." Yes, our past is still with us. We can never ever forget. We can forgive. Forgiveness is what we live, is what we practice. But we can never ever forget. Our past is still with us. June 16, 1976. That's the hashtag there, Youth Day 2016. Of course, this next tweet, it comes from Chama, and it says, "But not everyone had a good start to their day. There's been an accident just outside of Wits University between a car and a taxi, and it's alleged that one man has lost his life here. Please be careful on the roads today. They'll be much quieter here in Johannesburg, so people can someone drive a little bit faster then, and maybe not look at everything that's happening on the road." Now, let's take a look at some of the related hashtags of the day. The one that stands out, or two that stand out rather. The first one is Dear Class of 76. That's the hashtag. This one from IG Magnetic says, "I apologize on behalf of all idiots that gets drunk in school uniforms for they don't know what this day means. Thank you." There's a connection between between black consciousness, between us. Then the other one, of course, hashtag Riva. Who can forget what happened in court the last couple of days? Now, we've asked a question to you. Most of you agreed. And now, the photographs of Riva Steenkamp's murder will be released as per request by her father, Barry Steenkamp, who earlier this week gave a heartbreaking testimony in the hashtag Oscar sentencing procedure. Yes, those pictures will now be made public, so that we can see what Barry Steenkamp asked, how his family suffered. In sports, of course, today, the couple of hashtags doing the round. One is Protea Fire, of course, hashtag Protea Fire, and also hashtag Imran Taher. They're trending. A great 100 by Hashim Amla that you see on screen there. And a sensational performance from the team last night with Imran Taher taking 7 wickets in a one-day game, 7 for 45. He ended up with absolute magnificent performance by the boys. Now, on a totally different note, yesterday South Africa was voted as having the best Chardonnay in the world. Now, that's something, isn't it? Voted by DMZ Wine. Well done. Yep, we make some of the best wines in the world here in South Africa. Let's take a quick look at our comment of the day. Now, this one comes from Maps Maponyane. Maps, he talks about the Oscar trial. He says, the court has been speaking of hashtag Oscar Pistorius being a broken man, unquote. Even Barry Steenkamp had to say that he was he's a man with a shattered heart. powerful stuff there from Mapimonyane. Of course, Kevin Peterson jumped on the bandwagon today as well and absolutely lashed Oscar Pistorius around the similar principles of being a broken man and so forth. Lots of different tweets coming in there. Follow those hashtags. Now, this pick of the day, this one comes from Brand South Africa, and it's captioned, "As we celebrate #Youth Day, now young people in South Africa are crucial to fight against inequality. #Beyond 76. That's what it's about. Of course, yesterday we asked you the question of the day. That was, should Reeva Steenkamp's murder pictures be made public? Well, they've responded to us today and they're going to be made public. But let's take a look at some of those comments that we had with regards to this yesterday. That is what we have. Kevin Peterson. He had a lot to say about this yesterday. How the hell does a lawyer like Barry Roux sleep at night by taking on a murderer and doing his best to defend him? Unreal, says KP24. Kevin Peterson. Moabelo says, Newsroom, no, let's reserve what's left of her dignity. Those pictures will reduce everything that's left of her. No, says Star Moabelo. Then, Doodle me colorless here. Why now? Is he trying to get leverage against Oscar? The thing is public. It has no saying or power in the case. Specifically, my dear, the father asked for it to be made after the sentencing procedures. Carol says, no, it won't make any difference. This was a request from a broken father. Louise Jones says, yes, the photos of Reeva should be shown to the world to let us see what Oscar did with those dangerous bullets. Of course, July the 6th now is when we'll see the sentencing procedure play out. Let's take a look now at what is happening on the front pages from around the world. Now we'll start in Europe this morning. The Times reports that all drugs should be decriminalized. Britain's leading public health experts saying a landmark intervention. That was today. Make all drug use legal. Wow, the world is changing fast. Then, moving to the United States, the USA Today says that the father of the Orlando nightclub gunman Omar Mateen is involved in at least 2 active Florida corporations, including one filed this year called Provisional Government of Afghanistan. This is according to records there. Finally, we go to Israel, where the Jerusalem Post reports that the next war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza will be the last for the Islamist regime. This is according to a senior source within the Defense Ministry, though he stressed that Israel will not be the side to initiate hostilities. You're calling for a war, but you're not initiating the hostilities. I don't understand that. That's a little bit over my head. Let's take a quick look at what's happening around the country here today. Now, we'll start in Johannesburg. Now, students will compete and master chef style in a cookout competition at the launch of the Nelson Mandela Foundation's first Great South African Cookbook. This is happening at Constitutional Hill, and it's a wonderful initiative. Down in Port Elizabeth, of course, Nelson Mandela Metro Mayor Danny Jordan will address the Youth Day event in the northern areas there in Galvandale Township. It's been ravaged by gangsterism and drugs like most of the townships in and around Port Elizabeth. Then in KwaZulu-Natal, in Durban, one of the highlights of the year on the classical music calendar in the annual Young Performance Concert. Also in Cape Town, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu is launching a youth festival with a prayer at Artscape. The festival focuses on choices and consequences related to sexual practices and health. Now, a series of other performances have also been planned for families at the V&A Waterfront Amphitheatre to celebrate this important day, Youth Day. Don't forget our question of the day. We're asking you, are the youth of 2016, are they conscious of the importance of June 16? Yes, it's an incredibly important day in the calendar of South Africa. I just wish that sometimes we'll talk about it a little bit more. We'll understand what it's about a little bit more. We'll be conscious about who we are a little bit more. Time for us to take a break. This is Newsroom. When we come back, we'll be around the country and do a whole lot more. Don't go away.
One other person has been shot dead and another is in a critical condition in hospital.
The CRL has laid charges against controversial televangelist Paseka Motsoeneng.
More than 1.3 million South Africans have been added in the past two registration weekends.
The International Monetary Fund warns that policy uncertainty could dampen economic growth in South Africa.
And all eyes are on the new Bok coach, Alistair Coetzee. He's challenged to keep everyone in the country happy.
We're celebrating Youth Day here in South Africa. Welcome back. Now, before we carry on, I just want to share some statistics with you that I've come across from the latest Ipsos research that they've done with about 4,000 young South Africans. And this is some of the things that they say, which surprises me. 71% of the young people that have been part of this research, 71% of young people in South Africa say that they will vote on the 3rd of August. That's heartwarming. 65% of young people that they talk to, they say they are confident and happy about the future of South Africa. Why don't we see these numbers reflected in the media every day? Incredible, incredible, incredible stats. Now, today it's 40 years since the country's youth stood united and took it upon themselves to fight for what they believe was right. 40 years down the line, South Africa's current youth faces its own challenges, ranging from unemployment, drug abuse, decent education, and HIV/AIDS, I must add, amongst others. The country's unemployment rate currently stands at a record 26.7%, with young people making up the majority of the unemployed. Now, to help unite the youth in facing these challenges, Activate is a youth-driven organisation that mobilises young people across the country to find innovative ways to transform their communities and the country as a whole. Now, to tell us a little bit more about the organisation as well as the role it plays in helping the youth facing these challenges, I'm joined from Cape Town by the organisation's communications manager, Nelisa Mulan. A very good morning to you, Nelisa. Thank you for joining us on Newsroom today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, I want to get right in my teeth into it. We're asking, you know, young people in South Africa are often accused of being unconscious. I don't think they are, because I see a lot of young people getting involved in being active now. So the question we're asking here is to young people, really. It says, the young people of 2016, are they conscious of the importance of the day that June 16 is in our calendar? Are we aware of where we come from, what we fought for, black consciousness, the black consciousness movement of that time, the student congresses of that time? Do you think we still understand the role that brought us here?
Absolutely. I think it's often quite concerning for us as young people to be often told that we're not conscious when the environments we live in, the spaces that we move around in, are constant reminders of where we come from. I mean, with the recent Fees Must Fall protests, those were clearly markers and reminders of where we come from and where we find ourselves now as young South Africans. Certainly in the Activate space, it is made up of young people who wake up every day aware of these issues and challenges that face them, and they decide each day that they will dedicate their time to making a difference in their communities, which results in obviously making a difference in the country.
Do you think there's a small minority amongst young people that's making it difficult for the others? For instance, if Steve Biko, for instance, was alive today, he would really frown upon the burning of our facilities and so forth when we are supposed to be in a building phase of our country. How do you view that?
I think there is a growing frustration amongst many young people who don't know how to express that frustration, who don't know which channels to access in order to be heard. So I think there probably is that small minority out there who is frustrated and don't know how to articulate that frustration.
And that manifests itself in the burning of buildings and so forth, which is really setting all our processes back. But I understand that you had an imbizo about 2 weeks ago. Tell us about this imbizo that you've had. What were the outcomes from there, and what are you guys looking forward to?
Well, the imbizos are a series of conversations that young activators have been having around the country around pertinent issues in certain communities in the country. The one we hosted on Robben Island on the 28th of May was looking at how far have we come in our democracy? What is the current state of the democracy? What is the role that young people are playing in contributing meaningfully towards the growth of our democracy? So the aim of that was really to find ourselves in a space where to look at what are we doing as young people and what kind of support do we need from government, from civil society, from our fellow young people in order to advance the work that we're already doing. So that one was one of others that we've already hosted. We hosted one on land expropriation in the Northwest. We hosted one on the stigma around abortion at the Commemorating Museum in the Eastern Cape. We're hosting one today in Soweto at the Jabavu Skills Center, which is down the road from where the 1976 protests happened. That one today is really looking again at what does the spirit of 1976 look like in 2016? What is the challenge that we're taking up as young people, and what it is that we are pushing for in terms of overcoming the challenges that we have. So it's really about looking at what is our role, what are we doing to move things forward.
Let's quickly talk about the real pressing issues that faces young people here in South Africa. What do you see as the most pertinent threat to us? Yes, it's probably jobs, you're going to tell me, but what about some of the other social ills that we constantly see putting our young people at risk? Drugs, for instance. Drugs seems to be a scourge that's overflowing in our communities. Would that be a fair comment?
Yes and no. Yes, because I think it's pretty evident from the stats and that we see. I mean, when the stats report was put out last year, the status of youth looks pretty grim. But I think there is an opportunity there. If there's so many young people who are unemployed, the question that we should be asking ourselves is what are we doing with that potential? How can we turn that potential, that energy into something positive in the country? A lot of our activators who are unemployed are using their time to volunteer, to look around their communities around what it is that they can do to help. We know our education system is bogged down with many issues about the quality of the education. A lot of young people are doing tutoring programs, some, as small as 2 or 3 learners in back rooms in their homes to much larger programs. So I think as much as the outlook looks bad, there are many ways that young people can be supported. Their ideas can be elevated to make a difference and to make them feel like they're contributing meaningfully in the country.
Nelisa, thank you very much for joining us. Live from Cape Town, that is Nelisa Ngulana. She's the communication manager of a program called Activate. They call themselves Activate, the change drivers, helping young people to overcome the social ills. Now, of course, it's June 16 here in South Africa. In 1976, the uprising began in Soweto. Who can forget these iconic pictures? The uprising then spread nationwide. It profoundly changed our socio-political landscape here in South Africa. Events that triggered This uprising, though, can be traced back much further. We can talk about what was called the Bantu Education Act of 1953 that brought us to 1976. Oppression in many forms, but it was the insistence on educating our children in Afrikaans as a language or as a medium that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and the young people of South Africa took to the streets of Soweto the uprising started 2 years before that, 1976, when the murmurs about Afrikaans was already making the young people in South Africa unhappy, and the next 2 years culminated outside of Orlando Stadium in 1976. Today, 40 years ago, now, for something a little bit different. Nkanyiso, he's a poet. He's here to perform for us a great poem that talks about June 16, 1976. Thank you very much for coming in today. Nkanyiso, the floor is yours.
Yo! Siyabulela kulmaqhawe zizwe. Siyabulela kulimatholamgquba. We are fighters of Africa. We are fighters of Africa. Yonke loo nto sisithi ngolo hlobo. I salute a black people. You give a better education. Igazi lesizwe lantantazela inkululeko. Igazi lesizwe lantantazela imfundo enhle yelilizwe. Yonke loo nto ndisithi kuli boHector Peterson siyazinga ngani. Zelenze nje matholomgquba. Thina mzontsundu sakulikhumbula lithuba emagamenu lefani zenu sakuzibeka engqondweni. Masenzeli nje sakuzikhumbula. Seek a better future, a better education. Sithi kuni kwakhona yonke indlela sizahamba kuyo, zonke indlela sizakudlula kuzo, sawusoloko sifunda ngani, sizinga ngani, sibonakalisa imfundo yelilizwe. 1976 soze yalibaleke engqondweni. Masitsho sithi wena mntakontsundo ngevasephu, wena mzontsundo ngokasozajike. Sawuthi kuni, we salute you. Ngani masithi kuni nangomso nakusasa siyazinga ngani yegam yo.
Thank you very much. That giving us his rendition or his version of June 16, 1976. Yes, just under 10,000 students on that day marched through Orlando West, or the West Cliff as they call it today, because it's become quite a posh neighborhood here in Johannesburg, down to Orlando Stadium. They were confronted by the security police of that day, who opened fire on our children. And Kendall, it changed our history forever.
It has. And, it's one of the things that has led us to where we are right now today, be able to be working at SABC, the state broadcaster, to be speaking the things we're speaking, celebrating definitely a groundbreaking moment.
Well, we'll be back. Well, we'll continue, of course, our build-up to the main celebrations. Youth Day is supposed to start shortly after 11. But overnight, been a little bit of good news for South African sport, because we've been under the pump. We've lost in cricket. We've lost in rugby. We've continued to lose in football. The mood in the nation's a little bit down. But last night, the guys delivered.
They absolutely delivered. Imran Tahir did it for the Proteas. He did it for South Africa. Another groundbreaking moment, because he's now got the record for 7 wickets for 45 runs.
Yeah, it's an absolute incredible performance, but it was all set up. I have to say, it was all set up by Hashim Amla, who scored a brilliant 100 at better than a runner ball. So Imran Tahir could go out and express himself. Wonderful performance. Yeah. Kendall will be back with us a little bit later in the next hour to give you a complete match report and a complete update as to what happened. But behind us is a man who needs very little introduction. Tsietse Munari is with us to tell us the truth about the weather today.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. So let's have a look at what you should expect today in the weather. A bit of rainy weather just along the southwestern parts going towards the Eastern Cape. So just a 30% chance of showers are expected to KwaZulu-Natal as well as over the Eastern Cape province. And then clear conditions for much of the Republic as well as over Botswana, some parts of Namibia, and definitely over the northern part of Mozambique and into the uppermost northern regions of Central Africa. Your temperatures 31 for Maputo, so it looks like it's going to be quite a hot day. 18 for Maritzburg, and cold weather for South Africa in general. If you're going to be along Sunny's Pass into Lesotho and KwaZulu-Natal, just over the Drakensberg regions, they expect temperatures to be into 15 to about 13 degrees, so much cooler weather coming up there. Harare and Lusaka both at 24 degrees. Warm weather for Beira. Sunny skies are expected towards the northern parts of Mozambique. Antananarivo 22, and a bit of dry conditions are expected for the tropical regions, except maybe if you're going to be in Juba, there's possibilities of rain along those parts. But it's going to mostly move all the way towards the central parts and all the way into the western regions over Yaoundé. And those partly cloudy skies continuing right across the next couple of days. Temperature-wise, 25 for Yaoundé, Libreville, and going down towards the southern regions, do expect temperatures to go by 2 or 3 degrees up to 27 for Brazzaville. Kigali also into the mid-20s and lower 20s right across Kampala, Nairobi, as well as over Entebbe. Do expect those partly cloudy skies in some areas of Sudan, but it's going to be quite hot and dry over the central parts. Port Sudan should expect a bit of a temperature increase, and hot weather is expected to continue right throughout Mecca as well as over Luxor with a maximum of 42 degrees. Al Juf at 41, Seba 42 as well, 46 for all those that are going to be along West Africa. Do you expect rainy conditions as well, particularly from Conakry going all the way towards Abidjan and over Lagos. Yeah, some widespread showers coming up along those parts. And Ghana has been affected by severe rainfall over the last couple of days, so please take all necessary precautions. There's still lots of rain expected from Cote d'Ivoire going all the way to Lagos as well as into the central part of Togo. Possibilities of rain coming up thick and strong along those parts. Temperature still very hot, 41 for Niamey. And if you take a look at N'Djamena, 41 degrees as well. And Dakar also expected into those mid-20s. That's basically where I'll leave it for the weather for you. Do stay tuned. There should be more here on Newsroom.
What's wrong with Triple M? What is illegal here? Who is being defrauded here, Trevor?
It is about the best interest of the citizens of this country.
But the citizens are the ones who are playing, who are members or participants in this. If you put in 15,000 rand, after 12 months you get 1.2 million rands. I mean, who wouldn't go for this?
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News channel.
Health Talk unpacks healthy tips to help you to practice healthy living lifestyles.
Now, generally, type 1 is found mostly in children and young adults, and with type 2 diabetes is found mainly in the older generation, and also with an issue of obesity.
Don't have second portions, and then I've brought this plate model to show that for both meals, your lunch, your dinner, half a plate should be vegetables.
Within sports, we see the spectrum itself. Most often we see minor head contact injuries, we call them.
Right.
But certainly in sports, the one that a lot of attention is paid to is concussion.
You see, got something, boom. Yeah. Right, it's uncontrolled. Whereas in soccer, when the guy hits the ball, it's controlled. His neck muscles are controlling it. And that's why they say, for instance, in rugby, the training should be to improve your neck strength.
For more on health, join your host, Dr. Selo Motaung, every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
everybody. June 16, Youth Day, South Africa. We reflect back on 40 years of struggle today in South Africa. The young people in this country started it. Of course, today I'm with Rene West. Rene West is here on the news desk with us. Tete Monari has hung around. He's here, the meteorologist, the man who always tells us about the weather and the environment. He's with us. He's going to tell us what he thinks about Youth Day shortly. And then, of course, Kendall Mahamati is there with us. Now, Tete, we asked a question today to our viewers. The question regarding the consciousness of young people today. Young people are always under the pump from previous generations that they're not conscious enough. They don't do enough. What do you think about the young people? Before we take the tweets, what do you think, young people?
I think there is a bit of pressure as well to the young people. That's why you see a lot of them sort of lose focus because they're not really sure where they are. They want to find themselves, but then there's also this 40 years ago, the youth was this amazing and they fought for freedom. What are you fighting for? Are you fighting for Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Or you're fighting for your latest outfit or the bling or the big car, that kind of thing. Is that the struggle of today?
I think so. What I think mostly is that the youth need to be let find themselves and also define their own path so that they can also find their future perfect because it's now. It's no longer 40 years ago. It's now.
Kendall doesn't qualify as youth anymore, so we're going to ask Rene to give us to give us your view as a young South African today. What do you think the unique things that you're struggling with?
I think I kind of disagree with you. I think our youth, we've seen this uprising of the fees must fall, the Afrikaans must fall. So I think our youth is in a way continuing some of the fights that the youth of 76 were also fighting for. Perhaps at obviously different times, different kind of fight, but still, I think our youth are still trying to stand for something today.
Well, we're counting down to the official commemoration of 40 years on. Of course, the President has appointed 15 government ministers, no less, to handle today's proceedings. So it should be a massive show. It's from Orlando Stadium and all around the country is where we're going to be throughout the whole day, really, on this very channel, also on our sister channel on terrestrial TV on SABC1. We asked you the question. Let's just take a look at your tweets, the live tweets coming in, what people are saying about the question, Tiete. And people, I think some people agree with you, others not. This one from Doc Moses Belani. Evan Janssen, Newsroom. What a touching interview with Mr. Vlok. I'm glad he isn't in denial and hope others are learning from him. It was a wonderful interview, and it's nice to see that what was once the most hated man in South Africa has now turned full circle. And you can forgive, but you can never forget. Lesejo says...
Yeah, I don't think the youth of 2016 understand and appreciate the sacrifices of the youth of 76. And that's exactly what I was talking about. There's so much pressure for them to keep up to that. Yeah.
I don't think that you can expect them to understand it. I think the fight today is a different fight. It's a fight for consciousness. It's a fight to not take your clothes off on Instagram, I think, always. Rene?
This one again from Doc Moses says, I don't think so. The class of 76 made a lot of sacrifice, whereas the youth of 2016 burns infrastructure. Very good
That
point.
was pointed out by Minister Vlok earlier also, and you don't think about it. He said the youth of 76, their job was to break down the system. The youth of today, your job is to build up the country. So we cannot be burning things. Lesejo says, Newsroom, yet matriculants in Limpopo haven't started with their exams. How is that moving our country forward? Lesejo, every single country in the world has unique challenges. These are some of ours. Today, of course, we're talking about youth moving the country forward. It's Youth Day in South Africa. It's a big day for us in our history, but it's also a big day of celebration for us. Lots of news, though, still. A little bit behind schedule this morning, but Rene is going to give us the top stories on this Youth Day.
Today marks the 40th anniversary commemoration of the June 16 Soweto uprisings. President Jacob Zuma will address the main Youth Day ceremony at Orlando Stadium in Soweto. Convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius will know in 3 weeks' time if he is going back to jail. And the main location of the wreckage from the Egypt airplane that crashed in the eastern Mediterranean last month has been identified by a deep ocean search vessel. Before we get to the news, let's take a look at what's happening in the sports with Kendall Mahamate.
Rene, thank you very much. I quite like the discussion you just had right now, and I think I agree with your viewpoint that there are different levels of conscientization and different views in South Africa. And one of them definitely being the Roads Must Fall campaign, as well as the Fees Must Fall campaign. It definitely bodes well for a robust civil society going to the future. These are the young people that are going to be making up our civil society as we go and get old. Having said that, good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
And that should do it for Hashim Amla.
Hashim Amla and Imran Tahir lead the embattled Proteas to a bonus point 139-run victory over host West Indies.
That's it, Tahir. 7 wickets. Best ever one-day figures for South Africa.
Zane Davids laid ownership to that. The little stab through from Jackson. And now Bosch has got it. It's going to be another score for South Africa. Another major step towards the semi-finals.
And the junior Springboks beat their French counterparts by 40 points to 31 to book a spot in the semi-finals of the Under-20 World Cup against hosts England.
And Gignac could run for the hills here, or indeed run for goal. And Payet is supporting. Dimitri Payet seals it!
France leave it late to seal a win against Albania with a wonder goal by Payet.
Dimitri Payet is the man! Love you, Dad. The whole of France loves him.
That is what we've got for you in the sports later on. Be sure to stick around for all of it. But for now, it's back to the main desk for the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. Government strides to empower and give hope to young people will be highlighted when President Jacob Zuma delivers the National Youth Day commemoration speech at Orlando Stadium in Soweto. Today marks exactly 40 years since the tragic June 16 student uprising, which claimed the lives of hundreds of protesting youth. The theme of this year's National Youth Day is Youth Moving South Africa Forward. President Jacob Zuma will address the main ceremony today. He will be accompanied by his deputy Cyril Ramaphosa. Yesterday, President Zuma urged the youth to see June 16th as an inspiration for them to defend their freedom and to help build the country. Today's national event will be broadcast live on Channel 404 and SABC 1. The Hector Peterson Memorial and Museum, situated in Orlando West in Soweto, commemorates the role of the country's students in the struggle against apartheid, and in particular, the role played by the school children who took part in the Soweto protests of 1976, many of whom were shot by the apartheid police while protesting against the substandard of education in black schools in South Africa. A wreath-laying ceremony is taking place at the Hector Peterson Memorial in Orlando West. SABC Nozantombi Mia talked to Minister in the Presidency for Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Jeff Radebe, just before the ceremony.
1976, we saw a lifeless body of Hector Peterson, Hastings Ndlovu, and later Hotso Siachul. So the bravery of the youth of 1976 is inspiring the youth of today that what they fought for has now been achieved. Can you imagine that in 1976 they were fighting for basic education? But today the ANC government is providing largely free education in many schools. In higher institutions of higher learning, up more than 9.2 billion rand every year is being pumped for students to get bursaries and loans. So this means that the government today is responding positively to the challenges that the youth of 1976 could only dream of.
And the youth of 1976 played such a vital role in our democracy. It really was one of the watershed moments in the timeline towards us reaching our democratic freedom. And what do you have to say in terms of that?
Well, 1976 was a watershed moment because the history of South Africa before June 16, 1976, and after that has never been the same again. It put the plight of apartheid into the global spotlight. Ever since then, the anti-apartheid movement moved from strength to strength. That's why 27 April 1994 happened.
And we can see with all the activity that's happening that things are about to start now with the wreath-laying ceremony. How significant is that to you, just briefly?
Well, I think it evokes emotions that today all those sacrifices were not in vain, because we enjoy now a constitutional democracy.
Let's go over to Eben, who has more on this.
Yeah, Rene, it's an incredible cover statistic that comes out of the latest Ipsos report around young people in South Africa. It talks about more than 2/3 of young people have pointed out to them they will be going to the polls. They will vote on August 3. So that refutes the allegation that young people are unconscious in today's world. 65% of them, just under 2/3, they say they're happy and they're confident in the future of South Africa. So it's wonderful to see these kinds of statistics come forward and almost paint the opposite picture of what we see day in, day out in the media. For a little bit more, of course, we go around the country today as we celebrate Youth Day here in South Africa. 40 years, June 16, 1976. Let's now cross to Palesa for more.
Good day, Eben. We are in Kwakwa in the Eastern Free State, and right now we are at the Putadichaba Multipurpose Center, where over the past 3 days the Maluti Apofo municipality has held a youth empowerment summit. Now, joining us right now is the mayor of Maluti Apofo municipality, Mr. Vusi Chabalala, who is going to take us through what the purpose is of the summit. Good day, sir, and thank you for joining us.
No, thank you very much. We are proud to have you in our place, and we are happy to have the youth today.
Mr. Chabalala, let's go through what the purpose of the youth summit has been.
Well, this is one of the first youth summit that has ever happened in Maluti Apofung in the past 21 years. The reason why we really wanted to focus in the youth, remember, we need to invest more in the youth. That's why there is a slogan that says the youth is taking South Africa forward. And the reason for that is that the youth of 1979 and 1976, they fought for me and you. And that's why today it is within our responsibility as the current youth to ensure that we take this baiting forward, to ensure that we invest more in the youth and we make the youth to participate in the economy of the township economy and the local economy.
Now, yesterday they broke into various commissions. Resolutions were also drafted. Take us through what those resolutions were.
Well, what has commonly transpired in the commissions, the youth are crying about unemployment, they want jobs. The youth, they are talking about education, and you must remember that Maluti Apofung currently, I'm not sure which municipality is actually offering such many bursaries. We have given 455 student bursaries worth of a 60 million bursary. It's a full-time bursary. We are paying much more, so we are proud. And the youth is also crying about the economy, the local economy. And what we did as a municipality currently, we are now involving cooperatives. And if you can check, when you enter Putadichaba, the roads are painting, because remember the president is talking about back to basics. We need to clean our towns. We need to ensure that our robots are working. We need to ensure that we remove waste. So those cooperatives are actually the ones that are doing that job in each and every area that where we want to see our area being clean.
Now, today, the most important thing on the program was to inform young people, particularly even the learners that are here today, about this draft youth summit policy. Take us through that. I understand that from here it's going to be before the council for approval. Take us through this draft policy.
Well, what needs to happen from this draft policy, we had ideas from various stakeholders, the youth from churches, the youth from youth clubs, and many more other sectors of the youth. And then they participated, they brought their views, and then that's why we are having resolutions today, and we're going to take it to a council, as you've alluded to, and then we're going to take it back to the community for community participation, and then taking it back to make it a document which is a policy of the municipality, which is a youth policy. Because remember, in terms of the policy, we need to put at least a certain quota to the youth. If we are giving jobs, we must ensure that the youth are part of those mainstream economy.
Mayor, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That is all we have for you from now from the Putadichaba Multipurpose Center. With that, it's back to you in the studio.
Yeah, thank you very much to Palesa. Of course, the march in Orlando in 1976 were to culminate at Orlando Stadium, where a rally was going to take place against Afrikaans, or the instruction in the Afrikaans language. That's what triggered the uprisings. Now, Tomahole Mutlaori is standing by at a nice vantage point just outside or on top of the stadium to give us a quick overview. It looks like the mood is building up slowly, Tomahole.
Well, the mood here has lifted up considerably here at Orlando Stadium. And of course, it is a brisk morning and the temperatures might be low, but already with the program underway, the entertainment program, certainly in the studio, this youth that's gathered here has lifted the roof. You can hear them cheering on. But of course, we are here to discuss the importance of what the Youth Day is all about. And I'm joined by two young people who are making waves in the country. Of course, we are now joined by Nokothemba Mjali Khatebe. You are the young hospital CEO. Can you tell us, what does Youth Day mean for you?
Youth Day for me is a reminder of what are the sacrifices that have been done for us to be where you are. Particularly because it was the young people who responded to the challenges that were rising at the time. So for me, it's a reminder that as young people, we've got a voice. As young people, we've got a role, and a very critical role to play in society. We do not get to say we must wait for things or for people to do things for us. We are in charge. We are in control.
Right. Now, Jade Boas, you are the Standard Bank Young Artist of the Year for 2016. As a young achiever, do you think that today's youth, given the events that we've seen, obviously with things like Fees Must Fall, are now also taking their role in terms of shaping our society as seriously as the youth of 76, which took a stand and said no to Afrikaans medium education, which put our country's history in a different trajectory?
Yes, I think our youth, and when I say our youth, I mean us. I mean, people are standing up for what needed to be talked about 20 years ago. We are late to this conversation, and I think that the fact that we are actually engaging now in not just Fees Must Fall, but talking about decolonizing curriculums within a higher education sphere is so important to how we look at education in our country.
And when you talk about looking at education in our country, what do you think needs to be at the core of education in our country? Because I've heard many young people still complaining that, you know, we are still being taught about Jan van Riebeeck and about the colonial history instead of talking about African and Pan-African history.
For sure, and I think that is the big conversation now, is how do we go about changing the way we learn and the way we teach to incorporate our African history. Because it's not just one history. We have so many histories, not just within Africa, but in the world, that needs to be recognized as what it is.
Nokothemba, let me bring you back into this conversation. We know that Africa and South Africa have got a large youth population, and youth unemployment is one of the key challenges facing the country. As a young CEO, a young leader, a young employer, how do you think we can tackle this scourge, and what can the youth do to make sure that they also play a meaningful part in trying to change this particular problem facing society and the continent?
Okay, a lot has been said, and I concur with Jade on this one, on the way that we are viewing education, because at the moment we are teaching people to go into a workplace, and we are realizing more and more that there are less opportunities in the workplace. So we should really be gearing our education system such that we are able to breed and able to educate people to be able to stand on their 2 feet, without having to rely on a system in terms of I will need to be employed by somebody. So I really think it's just that mindset that we really need to be starting to be looking at, because as young people, I think we've got a lot to do, and we need to then also take it on ourselves and say, what are the opportunities that exist within government, within the private sector? What are the entrepreneurial activities that we could be looking into?
We see that government has also been trying to do its bit to meet the students halfway in terms of trying to bridge the gap for those who can't afford tertiary education, which is so key in terms of building the economy. This theme of education seems to be a connecting theme from the youth of 76 and the youth of 2016. What more can be done, especially by the private sector, to try and bridge the gap?
I think a lot of it needs to start way before we even get to a higher education point. You need to start from the ground up. What is happening in our basic education, our secondary education, that can uplift our standard of what we are learning and how we are learning, to incorporate or rather to prepare the students to enter a higher education and to enter an unfriendly workplace. Because what is happening right from the beginning, to be able to get them to higher education.
And what role can the private sector play to try and mitigate this, unfortunate gap, if I can use that word without trying to diminish how important it is?
The gap of unemployment.
The gap of unemployment, the gap of students who can't afford the quality education that will help them gain their employment.
You want me to be branded as a socialist? I think we need to start looking at the problem as not a government problem, not as a youth problem, not as a business or corporate problem. It's a collective problem for the country. What are the things, and we need to say collectively, what are the things that we need to do to put in place to be able to, one, make sure people have the right skills, they've got the right experiences, for them to be absorbed into the employment system if we are going that route. But what are the things that we're doing to encourage entrepreneurship? What are the things we are doing to make sure that people understand that it doesn't mean just having a job is not the end. It's not the only thing that we must be gearing towards. So I think corporate and business has a role to play in saying these are the skill sets that we require. What are we putting in the system to be able to get those skills, as opposed to them waiting for those skills to come to them? So I think it's a broader social responsibility that we need to be looking into.
All right. No, thank you very much for that, ladies. These are the two young achievers that basically have been making waves in South African society. And they're here at Orlando Stadium also to be part of the celebrations as we celebrate Youth Day, June 16, where the youth stood up and basically started a process that has now also led to the new democratic dispensation all those years ago. And they are saying that the youth still have a big role to play, and reflecting on some of the historical things that have just happened recently with the Fees Must Fall movement, saying that the youth is still at the forefront of transforming society. With that, it's back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Tumole. Right on top of the world there, on top of Orlando Stadium in Soweto. That's Tumole Motlaodi coming to you live, giving you a little update. As you can see, the atmosphere is building. We'll be going there live at around 11 o'clock. Now, I want to give you an interesting stat before we go to break. 40% of young people, according to the Ipsos research study, says 40% of them say that, well, there's no political party in South Africa right now that represents their views. That in itself is interesting. 51% said if an election were to be held tomorrow, they would vote for the ANC. That in itself is another interesting fact. We'll speak to the Apartheid Museum about, well, the Youth Day panel and other issues facing young people like bullying, hunger, gangsterism, and the like. So don't go away.
Did you go to heaven?
Kelvin is the one who created all this.
What are you fighting over? Us?
If there is 10 million in my account, it will be in the front page the next day.
Do you have 10 million?
Oh, Jesus, hold my hand. Hallelujah.
It's happening right here on Question Time today.
Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Now, today is all about the youth, a time of reflection from the years of the struggle, the causes that our youth of 76 fought for, so that we may be free today. But there are still several issues that our modern youth face. Now, the Youth Day Forum at the Apartheid Museum seeks to place young people at the heart of social and political debate. A range of topics from bullying, hunger, sexual violence, gangsterism, drugs, leadership, sexuality, cultural identity, interracial relationships, and so many more will be discussed later today. But joining us in studio is the head of the Apartheid Museum, Wade Davey, and members of the youth panel, Eve Lutandula and Sydney Davey. A very warm welcome to you today.
Thank you very much.
So this panel discussion will be happening a little bit later today. And can you tell us why it is so important to have these discussions on a day like this?
Would you like me
You're welcome.
From an institution point of view, we have the absolute relevant space for these type of forums to take place. And for today, the Youth Forum, it's a safe space. It's a place where they can come and learn about their history and then discuss the issues that they feel are important for them. And they will feel that they can do that in a way that makes them feel empowered. And we hope that's what will happen today.
And what are you hoping to achieve with this discussion and the message that you are hoping that people take away from this discussion today?
I think that it's not easy for us to say there's an outcome. But what we'd like to do is to say, here's a platform. Use the platform, and if more active citizenry comes out of that, it's a good outcome. You know, at least have this platform, have this space where you can express your views on whatever topic. And I must say, you mentioned the topics that came up. Those are the topics that Eusebius Mackay and I kind of came up with. He's the moderator of the... And when we asked the panelists what they'd like to speak about, it was totally not what we had spoken about. They came up with a whole lot of different topics, and it just shows you how far removed I am from the reality of young people. And so we're very excited about today. And those other topics might well come up in the discussion, but they themselves have had very different topics to what we thought.
Well, I'm sure it is going to be a very interesting discussion. There's just so many issues that the youth do want to discuss. But one of the things that we're actually asking our viewers today, if they think that the youth of today is as conscious as that of in 76. You know, do we care about the same things as the youth then did? What would you say to that?
I would say that we don't necessarily... I mean, I can't say we don't care, but we're not really faced with the same problems as the children of the youth of 76 were. We have our own challenges that we are faced with and that we need to overcome ourselves. Not that we can completely dismiss it, because we do face certain things such as racism still, and you know what I mean, sorry. And because of that, we can base our own opinions on these things and these certain things because of our past and also what is happening to us now. Yeah, basically.
I think that in a way the youth is continuing elements of the struggles that we saw then as we do now, such as equality to education, access to good education. And you know, we see that there's the Fees Must Fall movement, Afrikaans Must Fall movement. Why do you think we're still fighting these kinds of issues today?
Okay. I believe we're still fighting these kinds of issues today because it's an issue that you can never really beat. It's something that you have to continuously work on improving and becoming better. So it's still relevant today because we will always need education. But, you know, with money, it can be amazing if you have it, but if you don't, it can not just stop you from getting wants, but it stops you from getting needs, such as education. So it's still really relevant to still come together and still have face issues like the Fees Must Fall issues and issues facing or regarding education, because if we do not get the education as the youth and we are the future leaders, then it puts us in a position where we can really make a mistake, and that won't just affect us, but it will affect the youth after us.
Just to stay on that topic of education, of course, very important here in South Africa at the moment. We've seen, Vuwani, where a number of schools were burnt, and a lot of issues with our institutions. Why do you think that the youth feels the need to go and destroy or burn these kinds of institutions?
Well, from my own perspective, I feel like it's not so much of them wanting to break down things and burn cars and all that type of stuff. I think it's more because they feel so as if they can't get their message across any other way. As they because I'm pretty sure, before the protests, they did try to approach the vice chancellors and people like that in the higher ranking of the university. I'm sure they did try and approach, but their voices just weren't heard. So they felt as if they needed to cause a mini revolution of sorts, and maybe burning down buildings and trashing cars was just their way of getting the message across.
Just to move on to perhaps another issue that we're facing here in South Africa is youth unemployment. How would you go about addressing this socio-economic issue?
Okay, I'll answer that question. With youth unemployment, I guess we're always taught about entrepreneurship and not waiting for the perfect opportunity, but making the perfect opportunity. So with youth unemployment, with any business or any job, essentially you have the employer or person in power that employs other people. So I think in terms of employment, I think the best way to go about it nowadays is to just always be original and creative, even though it's hard to be original and creative in our time, but always coming together and finding ways to create jobs for ourselves and other people, and not just waiting to get the perfect job, but going out there and if you don't have access or the means to get an education, just always working hard and going out there and getting the dream that you want and working for it, so you can create a job not just for yourself but other people too. So you don't just face one issue, but you face other issues as well.
I think there's so many topics that you're addressing today, but one in particular that I think is very important is the issue of race. We've seen recently, these Facebook rants and this posts on social media that definitely grabs the media's attention. You're discussing interracial relationships a little bit later today as well. And I think what I'd like to ask you is, how do we move past this issue of race, especially, from all ages, from the youth to the older generation?
I feel that we first need to address the racism at hand. And we need to understand that there are people that are racist, and they have their own reasons for being racist, but let them be racist to themselves. And if they can understand that as well, it will make things much more easier. So they can have their own opinions. They don't have to impose anything on other people. And as the youth of South Africa now, we shouldn't really be facing these type of issues that we are, because we have come so far from the past, and we've done so much to try and get rid of that issue. But I feel like we're dealing with it quite well. We're addressing it. We're saying, no, but this is incorrect, and you need to understand why it's incorrect. And this is my opinion as to why it's incorrect. And if we can do that, it's the first step. We are moving forward from it. Yeah.
I think another issue that I'd like to discuss is the cultural identity. We see a lot of Western influence in the way we dress, in languages, our mannerisms. We learn from a lot of the Western TVs that we have here, lots of Western programs. How do we keep to our traditions and our cultural identities here?
It's Eve's topic.
Yes, I'll be the one that's talking about culture. It's always good to be yourself. And I'm not saying, or we're not saying, you're supposed to be one way, or don't do this or do this. With that being said, there's lots of cultures from the past and many more cultures that are actually being made and are coming up today. So it's about the dangers that you also do get. There are positive impacts to culture and there are negative impacts to culture. With regards to traditions, there's many traditions that people disagree with. I can't get into them specifically because it's an opinionated subject. So, with that being said, it's about knowing the dangers and knowing the positive and the negatives to specific cultures because there's so many of them. And if you're not educated and you don't know about them, it's really easy in our day and age with there being internet that's so easily accessible. If you don't know about the dangers of them and you don't know where to go, especially because there's so many youth today but that are lost and they don't know where to go, and you get to a certain age, especially where we're at now, where we're in university and we're students, and you feel like you're free already. You feel like you don't need guidance from your parents because you have this thing in you, and the culture that is given is that now you're in a position where you need to raise yourself. So with that being said, when you form new cultures like that, you really need to still be nurtured and still acknowledge and know that this is the right path, this is the wrong path. Of course, in a way, you can never say something's right or wrong. It's also an opinionated subject, but at least if you educate the youth about that, then at least they'll know what or where to go.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I do hope your panel discussion is going to be very informative for the rest of the youth here in South Africa.
Thank you.
That, of course, is the head of the Apartheid Museum, Wade Davey, as well as youth panelists, and we shall be moving on to Eben. Let's go to another news story of the day. One of the most hated men in South Africa, Apartheid-era Law and Order Minister Adrian Vlok, has a different mission these days. In the late 1980s, he was responsible for covert bombings, operations that targeted church buildings and trade union headquarters, and he even tried to kill an anti-apartheid priest by poisoning his underwear. Now, at the age of 78, Vlok seeks redemption from his past by opening his house as a refuge for the vulnerable and distributing food to poor black families. As the country is commemorating 40 years since the June 16, 1976 uprising, we asked the former Law and Order Minister what was going through his mind when he heard what had been done to the young black children.
I was a parliamentary backbencher in Cape Town, living there peacefully in Acacia Park, the parliamentary little dorpie. And that morning when the news broke that the students are rioting in Soweto, we were shocked. We were concerned and we were talking amongst each other now, what is going on now? But looking back and thinking what started that day, I must say that it was for the best of South Africa and all our people that the students started with this 40 years ago. To change the whole system, to change the whole country. And this is what it has come today. Now, I would say that we were very concerned, and I think the students were at that stage, the trigger, I think, was apartheid, was Afrikaans. But I think they were really standing up against apartheid, against the whole system of apartheid. I think they were fed up with this, and it is good that it has come to an end 20 years later. But I didn't think they realized when they started that morning what was going to happen 20 years later and where we are standing now 40 years later.
There's been a lot of change in South Africa over the last 25 years. How do you view this change, and how do you view the role of young people in South Africa today?
Oh, there have been many, many changes, and it was for the good. Not all of them, but the majority of changes that we have experienced over the past 20 or 40 years was for the better and for the best of South Africa and all our people. The role of young people hasn't changed in one iota or title, because, their role at that stage was very important. Today it is maybe even more important. During that time it was for them to break down a system, something that was wrong. Today they have to build a system, to build a new country, a new system that we are living in. Today they don't have to burn or to destroy anything anymore. they could sit down and our government and the people of this land, they are open to build, and we must build together. So the youth, their role is so important today. If we look at them and ask them, come with us, help us, help the old people, we should help them to build a new country that we are living in today.
I want to ask you about those days, let's call it the dark days as they were. Were you brought up to hate black people? And if that is the case, what is the thing that has changed in you today that you have these different views now?
It wasn't such a hatred for black people. But I thought myself, I regard myself as better than black people. And that is pride. And pride is a very bad thing to have if it is channeled in the wrong way. I myself, during that time, and this is the way I was brought up, and I come from a Christian family with wonderful Christian parents, but this is the way that I've grown up. I thought myself regard myself as better than black people, and this is the way in which we conduct our lives. We were also afraid of the huge majority of black people in Africa. We did not realize and regard them also as creations of the Lord, and this is what changed me. My first wife died in 1994, and after that I turned to the Lord and I asked, why? Why did she die? And then He started to change me. Today, I am a follower of Jesus. I try to follow in His footsteps and to follow His example. And that is why I am involved in helping other people today. But it is a change that took place over a period of time. But today, I follow his guidelines. His guidelines are the Bible. And I'm following this. And then He said, you must love me. Now, that's the easy part, to say, I love you, Lord. But the second thing that is equally important is I must love my neighbor. I must love my brother and my sister. And that is why I'm involved with an organization called Feed the Child. Yeah. We are feeding 10,000 children every day in South Africa. This organization, this is the food packets that we distribute in schools and in creches to have people, to help people just to have a meal. Yeah. And you know, even this is quite easy. Anybody of us can do this. Yeah. We can get involved in charity work and there to help people. You know, there's one thing that I would like to mention this morning. We have a terrible housing crisis in South Africa. Last week, when it was so cold, very cold, I was I went to Olivenhout and see the children and the people sleeping in the shacks, and it was ice cold. Yeah. You know, and there's nothing wrong with it. We build houses with many rooms for our children. Every child of us has a room for him or herself. But now the children in many households, they are adults. They left the house, but the rooms are still there. They are empty. I just ask, why don't we open our homes for these people that don't have anywhere to live? This will be a sacrifice from us. It will not be easy.
That would be wonderful if we could achieve that. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. Vlok, because, you know, back in those days, on the other side of the coin, I came through the last bits of the apartheid era, and we were very fearful of you, and in many ways it was a hatred towards you almost personally that we felt, if you mentioned the name Adrian Vlok. Knowing what you know today, what would you have done differently back then?
I would have, my actions against people would have been totally different. The thing that I didn't have during those days was love for people. I didn't love them in my heart, and you know, I was a hard person. I was a hard man. I was a hard man in my community. I was a hard man in my house, in my gesin, the people that my wife and my children, my family. I would have been changed. I've changed completely. I would have acted totally different. At that stage, I was say, I know best, and I am the man, and you must do as I tell you to do. You try to calm down a little bit, but I was hard. I would have been much softer, and I could have handled matters differently if I have known what I know today.
Very interesting discussion there with Adrian Vlok. Kendall Makhamate, and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Our top story for today is about cricket, where Imran Tahir recorded the best ever by a South African bowler and also became the quickest South African player to reach 100 wickets as the Proteas stormed to a 139-run bonus point win over the West Indies. This in their latest Tri-Nation ODI at Warner Park at St. Kitts on Wednesday. The veteran leg spinner took 7 for 45 in 9 overs as the host was shot out for 204 in 38 overs in pursuit of 344 for victory. His figures were 9th in the list of all-time best figures and beat the previous best mark of 6 for 16 by Kagiso Rabada for a player from South Africa.
Got him this time. 100th wicket in one-day international cricket for Imran Tahir.
Tahir also took his overall tally of ODI wickets to 105 in 58 matches, in the process becoming the fastest to cross the 100 mark. He bettered the record of 59 matches that was previously held by Morne Morkel. His efforts with the ball completely overshadowed what had transpired in the first half of the game when Hashim Amla notched up his 23rd ODI century to help the Proteas pile up 343 for 4. The opener hit 110 runs off 99 balls, which included 13 fours to provide the South Africans with a perfect platform and leave the home side needing what would have been a record second innings total to win. The masterly Amla shared in an opening stand of 182 with Quinton de Kock, who ground out a more measured 71 off 103 balls.
Brings up 50 runs in a one-dayer for Quinton de Kock.
Good hit. Good flat 6.
Chris Morris, promoted to number 3, initiated the attack with a quick-fire 40 off 26 balls, while Faf du Plessis was the one that had provided the fireworks for the visitors with his unbeaten 73.
4 more.
West Indies did manage a decent enough start as they'd raced along nicely to 90 for 2 at one stage, but it was then the spin duo of Tabrais Shamsi and Tahir that sliced through their lineup. Shamsi, playing in only his second ODI, took 2 for 41 in 9 overs, including the wicket of top scorer Johnson Charles out for 49, and left the rest to Tahir as the South Africans secured a memorable win.
Tahir, 7 wickets. Best ever one-day figures for South Africa.
They took off 4 or 5 points from the game and shot from the bottom to the top of the table with 10 points, 2 ahead of the hosts and 1 ahead of Australia, who they play again on Sunday.
Unbelievable. Talk about one-day cricket and spin, and he has been fantastic.
Right, let's take some comments from you on the Proteas' fantastic performance. We've got Arthur Mashallah. He says, well done to the Proteas. Knew you could do it. Stellar performance. Take a bow. Amy, way to set a record. Fantastic performance there by Imran Tahir. Sean, the real Sean, RSA. Great match and well done. Best ODI bowling figures at Imran Tahir. Great batting. That's for Amla, Hashim Amla. Proteas, hashtag Proteas Fire. We also have a tweet coming from Kinelo Munei. I was too sleepy to sit through the entire match. It was fire from the onset, and I knew it was our game to lose. Having said that, we have lost games that were our games to win, haven't we? What a win by the Proteas. Fantastic stuff by the Proteas. Non-Claire Amanda, great game by the Proteas last night. We needed to win it, and we did it in style. Hashtag Protea Fire all the way to the back. Fantastic stuff by the Proteas. It makes me feel really good that we've got a team that's performing extremely well when it really counts, and the Proteas did it, and they were led by Hashim Amla as well as Imran Tahir. Now, Highlands Park Football Club have secured the promotion to the Absa Premiership with a 2-0 victory over Mbombela United in their promotion clash at the Makulong Stadium in Tembisa. Highlands now join Baroka FC in top flight football, who gained automatic promotion at the end of the season.
in these playoffs. Now we will get a chance.
Having cruised to a 3-0 victory in their opening promotion playoff match against Mbombela United last month, Highlands Park came into this encounter as the obvious overwhelming favourites. And to the delight of their home fans at the Makulong Stadium, the Lions of the North were gifted their opening goal, courtesy of a massive defensive blunder by Mbombela's keeper.
Yeah, Highlands open the scoring. It's a mistake at the back from Mbombela United.
The rest of the first half was relatively uneventful as the visitors continued to try and push forward, but they didn't make the best of their chances on goal, and it was Highlands who went into half-time with the advantage. Proceedings were somewhat sterile for most of the second half, with neither team able to find a breakthrough. But again, it was left-back Peter Shalulile who brought Highlands fans to their feet. This time he found the back of the net with his right boot, securing his team's place in top-flight football next season with the game still in hand.
It all starts with one man.
Their promotion has effectively relegated the University of Pretoria from the Premiership. Samantha Mari, SABC News.
Now from Tembisa to Paris. Antoine Griezmann headed a last-minute goal and Dimitri Payet struck in stoppage time to give Euro 2016 host France a 2-0 win over Albania and a place in the round of 16. In the other matches played yesterday, Romania drew 1-0 with Switzerland, while Slovakia beat Russia 2-1. Here are the highlights.
Recycled by Conte, in by Payet towards Pogba. Rami now from the right wing position. It's Rami's cross, Griezmann! And Gignac can run for the hills here, or indeed run for goal. And Payet is supporting. Dimitri Payet seals it! He's the man!
Well, Stanku scored on Friday from the spot, and he scores again. Taken by Rodriguez. Oh, it's hammered in by Mehmedi. A terrific equaliser.
Uberchen. Now, Weiss could be in for Slovakia. If he can keep his head, keep his composure, he gives Slovakia the lead. Vladimir Weiss. Gone for the quick one. Oh, and what a quick one. Hamsik, utterly brilliant. Shatov. Shirokov. Shatov. That's better. That's much better. Glushakov for Russia gives them hope.
And in the last match, South Africa's junior box earned the big victory against France that they needed to qualify for the last four of the Under-20 World Rugby Championships. Running out eventual 40-31 winners, they trailed 24-18 at half-time. Now here are the highlights.
Okay, advantage. Referee playing another advantage, but France won't require it. The first try goes the way of Mathieu Tanguy. They recovered well there. Bursting through to within 7 metres. Now, can they recycle it? Yes, they can. Papia getting over the line. Has he got it down? The referee says yes. And it's Ambrose Papia. That was Bahag. And here's the drive. And it's almost unstoppable here. They've got the ball to ground. They've got the score. They've got just 2 metres to go. Papia just getting pushed out of the way. This one's for the big heavy fellas. Oh, and has he got there? He may well have done. Talent, Kerwin Bosch, looping pass out to his fly half partner. That's Libot, inside there to the wing, Van der Merwe. Look at the pace from the wing. That is brilliant. 18 and a half minutes on the clock, there's still time. All there with a put-in. There's Hall again. The burst of pace, and he's through. And they've got the score. And South Africa have the try bonus point. They've still got to go on and win the match. It was almost 50-50 at the back of that line out, but Zane Davids laid ownership to that. The little stab through from Jackson. And now Bosch has got it. It's going to be another score for South Africa. Another major step towards the semi-finals. South Africa lost the game in the pool phase on their way to the title in 2012. 4 years on, could it be a similar story?
There seems to be a little bit more life in the legs.
And on that victorious note, that's where we finish it off with the Sports Bulletin on this momentous day, the 40th anniversary of June 16, 1976. Up next, we look at the weather across the continent.
There are no permanent enemies or friends in politics.
I agree with Professor Siepe fully. Do people still preserve the meaning?
They have no clue what it meant to be black under apartheid.
Acting Police Commissioner Phahlane dropped a bombshell in Parliament this week when he suggested there could be a possible cover-up. What do you think of this story? What kind of problems were those, Vu, if I can just get in there quickly?
Every corner or sphere of our lives has become a site of struggle.
Watch Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali, Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Health Talk unpacks healthy tips to help you to practice healthy living lifestyles.
Now, generally, type 1 is found mostly in children and young adults, and with type 2 diabetes is found mainly in the older generation, and also with an issue of obesity.
Don't have second portions, and then I've brought this plate model to show that for both meals, your lunch, your dinner, half the plate should be vegetables.
Within sport, we see the spectrum itself. Most often we see minor head contact injuries, we call them.
Right.
But certainly in sports, the one that a lot of attention is paid to is concussion.
You see, you've got something, boom, right, it's uncontrolled. Whereas in soccer, when the guy hits the ball, it's controlled. His neck muscles are controlling it. And that's why they say, for instance, in rugby, the training should be to improve your neck strength.
For more on health, join your host Dr. Selo Motaung every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
David brought back black and white photography to life through the Zanzibar exhibition.
I'm a fanatic for tones. I love the kind of tones, the gradients and the greys, and it never bores me.
We're representing South Africa. I mean, we're flying the flag there, so it's a beautiful thing for us.
The dance floor is always lit when DJ Black Coffee hits the decks. He was praised for his appearance at this year's Coachella Music Festival in California. And he recently bagged the International Achievement Award at the 2016 Summers. Catch trends for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Africa is growing. As a result, it's also advancing the way it does things.
Any developments in technology can really do a lot to boost growth.
On Network, we'll show you how technology is improving the lives of Africans.
The life of an LED globe is 15 times longer
than what they have currently.
We also have new gadgets, games, and the continent's innovative technology ideas. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 19:30 Central African Time.
It's 11 o'clock Central African time. Happy Youth Day to all of you here in South Africa, and a very warm welcome to all of our viewers around the African continent. It's a special day here in South Africa. My colleagues and I, Renee Vest, Kendall Makamate, we've been on the show for the last 2 hours or so, and we're waiting for the official celebrations to get underway at the Orlando Stadium. Of course, Orlando Stadium is the site of that fateful day, June 16, 1976, 40 years ago today, that the youth of South Africa rose up against the system of oppression. This is our question of the day, of course. We ask you about the difference between then and now. We've had discussions around this. We've also got lots of tweets that have been coming in. Let's take a couple of those tweets that have come in. Cabello says, Newsroom, history is being rewritten and revised to portray non-partisans on 16 June 1976 as heroes.
This one coming in from Tato says, a lot has changed since the Soweto 1976 uprising. We have achieved through education, not all of us, but most of us.
Interesting take. That's an interesting take. This one is from Doc Moses Belani. He says, oh, Ivan Jansen, he mentions me. Thank you. What a touching interview with Mr. Adrian Vlok. I'm glad he isn't in denial and hope others are learning. Yes, we spoke about this. We spoke about forgiveness. It was a very interesting interview.
This one comes from Lesejo and says, I don't think the youth of 2016 understands and appreciates the sacrifices of the youth of 76.
We heard young people talk a little bit earlier about different struggles today. Different struggles today, Kendall, from what those young people's struggles were back in those days.
Absolutely, but it's something that I can expect. The world has changed dramatically since then. We now have Twitter, we've got social media where you say something, it happens across the world seconds later. So yes, different struggles, different times.
Yep. We're counting down to the start of the official celebrations today. Of course, Channel 404 will be marking Youth Day celebrations for the whole day. Griselda Lewis is standing by with us for an interview with the Minister, Mr. Jeff Radebe, who of course heads up the portfolio of planning, evaluation and monitoring. But before we go there, let's take the morning's headlines with Renee Vest.
Today marks the 40th anniversary commemoration of the June 16 Soweto uprisings. President Jacob Zuma will address the main Youth Day ceremony at Orlando Stadium in Soweto. Convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius will know in 3 weeks' time if he's going back to jail. And the main location of the wreckage from the Egypt airplane that crashed in the Eastern Mediterranean last month has been identified by a deep ocean search vessel. Let's take a look at what's coming up in your sports with Kendall Makamate.
Renee, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting morning all day, and I think it will remain being a very interesting day going into the weekend. Having said, I do know that all of you at home have heard about the fantastic results from South Africa's national teams. But before I get ahead of myself, here's what's coming up in the sports.
And that should do it for Hashim Amla.
Hashim Amla and Imran Tahir lead the embattled Proteas to a bonus point 139-run victory over hosts West Indies.
That's it, Tahir. 7 wickets. Best ever one-day figures for South Africa.
Zane Davids Made ownership to that. The little stab through from Jackson. And now Bosch has got it. It's going to be another score for South Africa. Another major step towards the semi-finals.
The junior Springboks beat their French counterparts by 40 points to 31 to book a spot in the semi-finals of the Under-20 World Cup against hosts England.
And Gignac could run for the hills here, or indeed run for goal. And Payet is supporting. Dimitri Payet seals it!
France leave it late to seal a win against Albania with a wonder goal by Payet.
Dimitri Payet is the man! Love you, Dad. The whole of France loves him.
Tell you what, this club back in England know they've got a gem on their hands now if they didn't know it before. That's where we leave it for now, but a little later I'll be back. But for now, it's back to the main desk for the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Government strides to empower and give hope to young people. This will be highlighted when President Jacob Zuma delivers the National Youth Day commemoration speech at the Orlando Stadium in Soweto. Today marks exactly 40 years since the tragic June 16 student uprisings, which claimed the lives of hundreds of protesting youth. The theme of this year's National Youth Day is Youth Moving South Africa Forward. President Jacob Zuma will address the main ceremony, and he will be accompanied by his deputy, Cyril Ramaphosa. Yesterday, President Zuma urged the youth to see June 16 as an inspiration for them to defend their freedom and to help build the country. Today's national event will be broadcast live on Channel 404 and SABC 1. Now, for more on this, let's go over to Eben.
Yeah, actually quite simple. They couple of minutes behind schedule at Orlando Stadium. As you can understand, it's a bit of a security nightmare, and well, all roads leading into there has been blocked off, and cars are being searched and the like. But Griselda Lewis, as always, is standing by to bring us up to speed. She's with the Minister in the Presidency for Planning, Monitoring, Evaluation and Administration, Mr. Jeff Radebe. Very good morning to you, Griselda. I know you're standing by there, but the atmosphere starting to pick up.
Well, absolutely. A very good morning to you, Eben, live from the Orlando Stadium here in Soweto. Well, this is where, when Sowetans wake up this morning, they'll be celebrating and commemorating the 40th anniversary, celebrating the lives of those in 1976 who stood up against the apartheid regime and said that they do not want Afrikaans to be used as a medium of instruction. We saw thousands of these youths, young people, learners, take to the streets here in Soweto and were subsequently mowed down by apartheid police when they stood up against a regime which was unfair, which was discriminatory at that time. And certainly the commemoration here today, 40 years later, many people saying they'll come to the stadium here today to come and pay homage to those who really were part of the people who started to pave the way for democracy in this country. I can certainly tell you that the Orlando Stadium is fast filling up. Both young and old have come here to the stadium to pay homage, and certainly we're seeing quite a lot of people in uniform. You remember, of course, during this time, you know, it's a symbolism. You put on that school uniform of whichever a high school or primary school that you come from, and you show that your school represents and appreciates the sacrifice of those of 1976. But certainly, the program has been continuing since early this morning. Some of those, of course, you'd remember who were honored this morning, the 1976 victims, Hastings and Ndlovu, one of those people who died in 1976. He was honored this morning, where Tabete Street, where he lived here in Orlando West, has been changed as well, to Hastings and Ndlovu Street. So really honoring and celebrating those who made that immense sacrifice. But let's chat now to the Minister in the Presidency, Jeff Radebe, about some of the, the achievements and some of the challenges, I guess, that government continues, to experience 40 years later. Minister, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Well, viewers.
Yes, we're starting to see the crowd fill up. There's quite a hive of excitement around this day. We're seeing both young and old, come through to the stadium. When are we expecting proceedings to get underway? We understand that we're supposed to be 11 o'clock.
Yes, maybe around about 11:30 or 12. As you can see, people are coming in their numbers, so we're waiting for the program to start. But we're very excited on this day that at least the class of 1976, they were dreaming about good quality education. They were dreaming about a new democracy. The youth of 2016, they are enjoying the fruit of democracy, the fruit that has been actually, the seed was laid by those youngsters of 1976 who defied the might of the apartheid state, who said no to the imposition of Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. They wanted good quality education. The government of today is responding positively to the plight of young people. As you can see, there are many schools in our country that are no-fee schools. In institutions of higher learning, government is pumping billions of rand in order to ensure that our students at institutions of higher learning can get good quality education. No one is barring them of going to any university today. No one is barring them of choosing any course of their choosing. So we can see that even though we have not attained all the objectives of democracy in our country, but the basis has been laid. The past 22 years, the basis has been laid in terms of entrenching all the institutions of political democracy. I think the big thing now going forward is to ensure that many young people who constitute about 60% of our population must enjoy economic democracy.
I want to talk about some of those objectives, Minister. You know, and look at the similarities. I think there's no denial that much has been achieved, including access to quality education. That has certainly, been bolstered. But if we look at the similarities between 1976 and 2016, back then, of course, it was a protest against Afrikaans being used as a medium of instruction. But in 2016, we saw again students take to the streets. We look at what happened at the University of Stellenbosch. We look at what happened at the University of the Free State and the University of Pretoria. Similarities where Afrikaans was still one of the main issues that they were grappling with, and basically wanted English or other languages to be prioritized equally so. Why do we find ourselves in that position 40 years on?
Well, I think the first point to be made is that the challenges that the students face today are different challenges than the ones that were faced by the students of 1976. Today, they want the acceleration of the education opportunities for everyone. Today, they want economic opportunities. That is why government led by President Zuma last year, when the movement of #Fields Must Fall, we said that we sympathize with all those challenges, and the president leading the government responded positively in ensuring that in 2016 there are no fee increases, which government has actually committed and implemented that resolution. So what I think the students of 2015 and 2016 are saying, they want the acceleration of the democratization process, especially economic opportunities for young people, as I've said, who constitute more than 60% of the South African population.
I think the acceleration would also speak to access. You know, access seems to be the new buzz around young people, access to quality education. Of course, then you look back to 1976 again, when you had, learners from Orlando West Primary who took to the streets over access and wanting equal opportunities, such as those of their white counterparts. Access is still an issue in 2016. We saw, a lot of young people say, I'm being excluded on the basis that, I'm experiencing financial constraints in my family. Where do we see this acceleration program going, Minister? Because you still have many who say, how can you exclude me from an institution? The fees at these institutions are exceptionally high. That, of course, the President has had to say, we do not see the need to increase. Many are still complaining about financial exclusion.
Well, I think the first point to be emphasized is that 300 years of colonial rule and 40 years of apartheid can never be swept away in mere 22 years. But government has done a lot of good in order to respond to the challenges that the young people of South Africa are facing. I think the responsibility now is to working together with young people, is to continue providing these opportunities. And government is providing those opportunities. Look at the National Youth Development Agency, who are the primary convener of this initiative today. There are many opportunities in education, in health, and so on. Look at the Department of Trade and Industry. They have this mega project of creating black industrialists, of which the major beneficiaries will be young people. Look at social development program, where more than 16 million South Africans, those who are unable to fend for themselves, they benefit out of the social services grant of our government. All these initiatives point to one direction, that we are committed as a government working together with young people to accelerate this process of the economic emancipation of the people of this land. But more than that, these economic opportunities must inspire the youth not only to get jobs, but to be job creators. So we're looking for innovation. We look for all those bright young minds who can assist us so that we can see the future of this country being bright, because the future is the youth of today.
Do we think that's the way to go? You know, I don't think anybody would agree to young people being dependent on government solely to make things happen, but to encourage perhaps a spirit of entrepreneurship, where instead of being employed, they themselves can be employers in future.
Yeah, correctly, because the government on its own will never be able to succeed. That's why in the National Development Plan, our Vision 2030, that government on its own, even though it must increase its capability and capacity to deliver services, but the fact of the matter is that the South African economy, 80% is in private hands. So we require the private sector to come to the party. We require labor, we require organs of civil society, we require basically active citizenry. And we're seeing the emergence of this partnership. Look at the partnership between government, private sector and labor in the National Collaboration Trust, where more than 300 million rand is being spent every year in order to ensure that we improve the educational outcomes, especially in district municipality. So I think, as I've said, the basis has been laid. Let's work together so that we can move South Africa forward.
You know, just before, Eben Jansen had crossed to us here at the Orlando Stadium, he was reading one of the tweets that said, from one of the people who had tweeted to SABC Newsroom, saying that the youth of 2016 don't appreciate what the youth of 1976 did. There's been quite a lot of condemnation for the manner in which, for example, students and universities have vandalized property, running into hundreds of millions of rands. We saw that being a serious concern being raised by the Minister of Higher Education, Clayton Simande. Do you share that sentiment, perhaps that young people in 2016 are going about it the wrong way? Yes, they do have legitimate concerns, certainly that cannot be downplayed, but the manner in which they're going about raising those concerns, do they believe that government is listening to them?
Well, I do not share that negative sentiment. I believe that the majority of young people are very positive. They are very vibrant. They are looking to the future with bright eyes. There are few individuals within the student movement in particular who want to destroy and tarnish the image of young people. They are responding to different circumstances than the ones that pertained in 1976. That is why the president condemned in the strongest of terms those few individuals who are banning schools, public property, because there is no justification for whatever grievance that your right, if you exercise it, you must therefore violate the rights of others. So that's why we have to condemn that, but we need to ensure that all these must serve as a lesson that we still have a long way towards the economic emancipation of South Africa. We require constantly to read our constitution, so that we must be inspired by that bravery and the sacrifice of the June 16 generation of 1976. I say the youth of this country is the future. Let's assist them to do the right things, and the majority of them are responding positively to our constitutional democracy.
Well, the Minister in the Presidency, Jeff Katebe, thank you very much for your time. Certainly we look forward to President Jacob Zuma's address here this morning, where certainly I think he'll touch on the many achievements that the Minister does speak of, and some of the challenges. You know that the youth of this country today are dealing with some of their own new challenges, some of the issues perhaps relating to alcohol abuse, drugs, youth unemployment. Definitely those are some of the issues that President Jacob Zuma is expected to touch on. When we do get underway with the official program, which is expected to start at about in the next couple of minutes, we are expecting to be live on channel 404. and as well on SABC One, so that everybody can have access. This is the public broadcast, and we're seeing quite a lot of people coming through to the Orlando Stadium. You can see the pictures on our screen there. Quite, I must say, an enthusiasm that I haven't seen in a very, very long time, but it's certainly refreshing to see, I guess, people quite inspired about how the youth of this country can move this country forward. Just take a look at that, you know, a lot of excitement, you know, young people of this country, very vibrant. We dance practically for everything. So see some of those moves, I think I'll try them a bit later on, Eben. But anyway, back to you in studio for now. It certainly looks set to be a very exciting morning here. But of course, we look forward to that address by President Jacob Zuma.
Thank you very much, Griselda Lewis. As you can see, in South Africa, we call that a bit of gis. For those of you in the rest of the continent, it means spirit. Today, you see the spirit of the young people of South Africa. And I agree with what the Minister in the Presidency said there. More than 70% of young South Africans, this is according to the survey by Ipsos, have a positive outlook in South Africa. They believe in the future of the country. And 71% of them say they will vote in the August 3 election. So yes, young South Africans are as conscious as, well, what we say we were back in the day. But let's go to the news desk where Renee has more.
Thank you very much, Eben. A high unemployment rate at the Bushbuckridge municipality has forced some young people to venture into creative ways of making a living. Among them is 35-year-old Walter Mashaba, who specializes in creating sculptures. He mainly sells to tourists.
Ridge, a rural municipality confronted with a number of challenges. Among them, a very high unemployment rate of 64%. This has prompted young people like Walter Mashaba to find alternative ways of generating an income. Mashaba produces different kinds of artwork using clay and cement.
After my matric, I did not have enough to can go further with my studies. So I decided to, because I had a background of art things, so I decided to search myself. So I found that I can do something using my hands to change my life.
The Madiba artwork is the most loved by clients, a man Mashaba describes as his hero.
Now that I'm able to at least make a living out of my art, it is because of him. So that's the reason mostly I love him. And my clients also love to have the art pieces. So I normally do this for my clients because they demand the art piece.
As South Africa celebrates Youth Day, Mashaba has called on young people to stand up and not rely on government for assistance.
Search yourself. You will find something out of you. Don't stay lazy.
The Bushbuckridge municipality has promised to assist young people like Mashaba. Plans are afoot to establish an exhibition center in the area.
We are now going to establish that center where all the cultures and also artwork that is produced in Bushbuckridge will be showcased, and also to make sure that tourists, as they're coming to Bushbuckridge, they will be able to tap in that market.
Mashaba's wish is to see his business grow, but this can only happen once he has got a proper workshop. He currently runs his business from this shack. Walter Mashaba is not in the business of art only to make a living, but also his aim is to motivate young people, especially those of Bushbuckridge, that they can use their talent to make some income. Moeli Maslela, SABC News, in Bushbuckridge, Mpumalanga.
The tragic but heroic events of the Soweto uprising in 1976 have inspired a continent-wide observation of June 16. In Zimbabwe, an innovative program is redefining the identity of most disadvantaged African children.
Children in this part of the world can now play freely without the constant fear of gunfire from an oppressive regime. But 40 years since the student uprising, this generation faces its own battle against HIV and AIDS, poverty and stigma. These children don't have parents, a phenomenon so common in Zimbabwe. The United Nations Children Fund believes AIDS has orphaned an entire generation. It says Zimbabwe has the second highest rate of orphans in the world, and 1 in every 4 children is affected. An innovative program is redefining the identity of this group of African children. No longer orphans, they are now taught to call themselves by another name.
I am a history maker.
I am a history maker.
It's part of a program started in 1996 by millionaire philanthropist and telecoms businessman Strive Masiwa and his wife Tsitsi. The foundation was formed to educate, feed and train a growing number of children disadvantaged as a result of HIV and AIDS. In the process, the Masiwas noticed that the children who had been left to fend for themselves had developed unique leadership skills more advanced than their peers.
We've actually seen these, students gaining significant levels of self-esteem, self-belief, and then even going out there to become community leaders.
Several history makers have gone on to attend Ivy League universities. One is a Rhodes Scholar. Knowledge Chipanera, orphaned at 7, graduated as a political scientist from a U.S. university last month.
When you have people telling you that you are a great person, you have something great in you, you can still do great things besides what happened to you, and you're like, oh wow, this is surprising, I never thought about that.
The program has spread across the continent and 100,000 children have been impacted. The Masiwas say they want to raise 2 million African scholars to be transformative leaders by the year 2020. Shingai Nyoka, SABC News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
It's transformed how school-going youngsters relate to the Constitution, a campaign that is to get South Africans to play an active role.
The Constitution is the most progressive in the world. Now, a simple yet powerful campaign, #IamConstitution, is encouraging South Africans, young and old, to read, embrace and live it.
They make it look so easy. Reciting extracts from the Constitution. For these pupils, a subject of a different kind. And through creative arts, this complex topic is tackled.
The better way to make people of South Africa to understand and to acknowledge and to uphold the Constitution was just to study it on the foundation phase.
As the country marks the 40th anniversary of the 1976 Soweto uprisings, a new generation of leaders. The results inspiring.
We as a young generation, we will build this country. I love South Africa because South Africa is a free country.
They highlight sightseeing the inner city.
This whole experience has been a very educational.
The campaign plans to go national. Gillian Pillay, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Imagine at the tender age of 10 being solely responsible of a household. That's the reality of life for schools of children in South Africa, a phenomenon known as child-headed households. The majority of child and youth-headed households are in KwaZulu-Natal.
Children, the epitome of innocence, requiring just love, care, protection and guidance, free to laugh and play. It's not just a privilege, but the right of every child as enshrined in the Constitution. However, in a country where poverty, crime and disease levels are high, for many children, their basic rights become a privilege and one many still don't enjoy. Shoba Shobane, south of KwaZulu-Natal. Teliwe, like many children, was forced to give up her childhood. After her mother abandoned her and her little brother, she became solely responsible for the family.
Even this house, I built it with my brother. After our mother left us, we built it so we could have a roof over our heads.
In her teens, she had 2 children, adding to her burden. For years, they lived in squalor, in a dilapidated mud house, often going to sleep on an empty stomach. Despite an outpouring of help after the SABC broadcast their plight last year, for Eliwe, the years lost she can never get back. Her challenges are similar to those of Nondumiso Hlongwa, who lives in Mandeni on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast and is responsible for her 8 siblings. They currently share this one-roomed house. She is unemployed.
Our situation is that 8 of us live in this house. 9 of us are working. We get odd jobs but are not enough. Even the area doesn't have water. There are no adults. It's just us children. Our parents died and we have no other relative.
Government is currently compiling a child and youth-headed household register. This so they can give assistance. It's estimated that there are over 3,200 child-headed households in South Africa, and the number of youth-headed households identified at just over 6,500. At this year's International Children's Day celebrations, President Jacob Zuma made a plea to South Africans, to neighbors of such households, to help. And in the words of the late President Nelson Mandela, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. I am Mhlongo, SABC News, Durban.
Youth Day, we take a look at those young, powerful and smart minds that are making a difference in their community through innovation, entrepreneurship or humanitarianism. But one man that is making waves not only in his community but in the country is the youngest mayor, 28-year-old Bongani Baloyi, who is leading the way in the Mid-Vaal area. He is working hard to eradicate unemployment and is facing some recent challenges such as fighting the Demarcation Board's possible decision to merge Mid-Vaal with Sidibeng and Ifuleni. Earlier we spoke to Bongani Baloyi.
That firstly we reaffirm our commitment to a democratic South Africa and its founding values, but equally to appreciate that we come from a generation that defined their struggle and fought for their struggle against the injustices they faced at that particular point in time. So for me, it's a moment where we must reflect as young people in South Africa, throughout all various sectors where we may be leading or not, to ask ourselves what is our struggle for, what are we as a generation going to define our struggle, and what is our contribution to taking the country forward. So what we've planned as a municipality is to launch a project called Kgatelo Pele, meaning Step Forward, for young people. This is a project which seeks to empower young people and rather use young people in maintaining our municipal infrastructure as opposed to service providers. So we're going to seek 250 young people who are going to partner with the municipality and assist us in rolling out service delivery in their own communities.
28 years old. 28 years old is old enough, but still very, very young to be in the kind of position that you are in. How did you arrive at this point, at this age?
Actually, it's 29.
29 now?
29, yes. So, look, it's the opportunity through my political party that I was given. I served, in fact, I was appointed mayor at 26. So I have some few years of experience now.
So you're an experienced head now.
So it's been an interesting journey, and given the opportunity to serve my community, which is a privilege. I mean, this is what I should be doing now, and in fact, I enjoy responding to the challenges of the country, my community, and also doing something different. But equally ensuring that young people are capable and can lead and can contribute to making positive change.
Yeah, young people are often accused of not being interested in the future, and we often see reports of young people embroiled in drugs and alcohol and all other unethical things. How do you reflect on the struggle of young people today?
Certainly, young people are faced by significant challenges, unemployment, poverty and inequality as well faced in the main young people. So it's difficult. Young people have some difficult challenges, but it's not all young people who are found in negative spaces. There's a significant amount of young people who are contributing to positive change in the country and leading their communities. So for us is to say, how do we break the barriers of unemployment, inequality and poverty to lift young people out of the slums which they find themselves in, but equally to give them hope, but also to entrench a very important principle of vukuzenzele. And saying, do not wait for government to do everything yourself. Do not be self-reliant, but rather be independent and make sure that you are in a position to deliver prosperity for yourself by using opportunities government is making available.
So it's about the attitude that you as a young person bring to the party, not just in politics, but in life in general.
Correct.
Tell me about your committee, because I'm sure that it's made up of a lot of our older gentlemen who have their reservations about you, who must constantly feel like they want to give you some wise words. How have you been received, and how has this transition been within that sort of context?
It's been an interesting transition. I mean, I've learned some valuable lessons. One often assumes that by virtue of the title you carry, you automatically have their respect. But actually, you get it over a period of time. You build relationships with people over a period of time. So it's been a long journey where I have to prove myself consistently that I'm capable and able, but also importantly to influence content. This is how people build trust in you and also are comfortable in you leading and want to follow your leadership as well. So it's been some hard lessons, but equally I had to, in 3 years, make sure that I learn as much as possible and also be in a position to give sensible advice and also provide leadership.
There's also a cultural paradigm to this kind of age thing. I suppose also a religious one around the elders and all of that. Has that surfaced, and how have you managed to deal with that?
It manifests itself in different spaces. But I just kept consistent working hard. But again, whether you're young or not, but if you've delivered the goods and the results, that matters. So then age is a by the way. So my strategy was to ensure that firstly we deliver the goods, and we've got 2 back-to-back clean audits under my leadership, which no one has been able to do in the municipality. So that in itself suggests that we know what we're doing. There's leadership in the municipality and we're charting forward.
Absolutely. That's about getting it done in any job that you take on. If you can get the job done, you'll get the respect, ultimately. Something you should share with our Springbok coach. I want to talk about the biggest advantage you now. So everyone would think it's maybe a little bit of a negative, but I'm sure that it also has some advantages of being a young gun and being thrust into that sort of position of authority at a young age.
It does. Look, I think my energy levels are second to none. I can work harder than any of my competitors in the space. But equally, I think there's a greater sense of urgency that I carry. In 2016, it should not be known that you still have some families without access to water, sanitation, and this you still find in my own municipality. So there's a greater sense of urgency saying, actually, before we consider all the other factors, let's consider humanitarian issues. It should not be known that people still should live in various conditions or situations or circumstances. So there's a greater sense of awareness and urgency, and also breaking out of the mold. Not traditional government as we have seen it, but actually a people's government, taking consideration of communities in a sensible manner, interacting and providing accountability.
Now, to wrap it up, some political parties, whom I won't name because it's not about politics today. Today it's about young people, about leadership and about that sort of context. But there's been a call for more young members to be involved in Parliament and be involved in mayoral committees. Do you think this is something that should be discussed in South Africa a little bit further?
I agree. Look at the population. The biggest population group is young people. And look at the age of leaders. I mean, there's a big disparity there. We're virtually led by dinosaurs. So you need a decent mix in between. So certainly young people should be a big part of government. And certainly young people who have no ties to the struggle and no commitment to things that happened in 19 whatever, but a commitment to South Africa, improving, liberating South Africa economically, and also ensuring that we deliver prosperity to our residents.
Bongani, you're an absolute shining light. It's lovely to meet you. Bongani Baloyi is now 29 years old. He's the youngest mayor in South Africa and one of the very youngest all around the world. He says being a young mayor has helped him to be a better mayor because he can simply get more work done than the older folk. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, moving on to the main events of today at Orlando Stadium, the atmosphere is certainly building. Let's cross over there to Griselda Lewis, who is standing by with the Basic Education Minister, Angie Motshekga.
Well, welcome back to the Orlando Stadium here in Soweto. This is the 40th anniversary of the 1976 Soweto uprising. As you can see, the stadium fast filling up there. We've got ministers who are in attendance. If my eyes are not deceiving me, I can see there the Defence Minister, Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, as well as the Northwest Premier there as well. We can also see there some of the other ministers who are in attendance here. Certainly amongst them as well is the Deputy Minister as well, them Dumanana, and many others who are in attendance here at the Orlando Stadium. Of course, all coming to pay tribute to those who made that grave sacrifice in 1976, you know, rising up, putting their fists up against a brutal government, an apartheid government, and saying they do not want Afrikaans to be used as the medium of instructions in these schools, mowed down by apartheid police back then. And 40 years on, we still celebrate and look back and appreciate the sacrifices of those, because I think one would say without a doubt, those were the beginning phases. There were other incidents before that, but the beginning phases of those who stood up and fought for the democracy that we now all enjoy as South Africans. We're expecting President Jacob Zuma to give a very important a keynote address here this morning, where he'll touch on the many successes and the challenges that are faced by young people in this country, both old and new challenges, and perhaps how government plans to intervene in some of the challenges that still exist amongst young people. But back then in 1976, it was all about education, access to quality education, not wanting Afrikaans to be used as a medium of instruction in our schools. Who better to speak to than the Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga. Thank you very much for your time, Mayor, this morning. I think it's quite important. Thank you very much. I think it's quite important for us, to put a bit of context to what all this is about, what we're celebrating here. When many people talk about, the events of 1976, June 16, it's spoken about in isolation. Nobody really goes back and looks at where all this began. This was actually inspired by the events that were happening in the SADC region. This is what propelled those youngsters to take to the streets and say this was enough. Part of that was the Frelimo rally. Let's talk a bit about that and what then led to these thousands take to the streets. Unarmed, faced head-on with the barrel of a gun.
No, exactly. 76 was not an event. It actually was a culmination of a process which has been long coming. At that time, there was really fertile ground in the province, in the continent, where our neighboring countries were beginning to win their freedoms. And 74, which was not very far from 76, Mozambique had just got its independence. There were Frelimo rallies, universities were shut down. You have your DROs that were ready. So it created the momentum and it deepened the consciousness about the need to liberate ourselves. So when 76 came, it really found fertile ground where there was consciousness and appreciation of the need to fight even harder. That's the context of 76. You had your Namibia getting its independence, we had Angola, you had Zimbabwe, and there was a real momentum in the SADC region, which created this necessary momentum that ended up culminated with the June 16.
I guess, this again, when we look back, every time we say South Africa cannot owe its democracy or just shy and say it's just us that fought. There were many others, and you're absolutely right, because when many speak about 1976, they speak about it in isolation, but this was all as an inspiration of many others in Namibia, in Mozambique, who were fighting for themselves at the time.
And the victory is ours, and we should really always appreciate that as South Africa, that the victory of 1994, it's the victory of the continent, it's our victory as Africans, it's a struggle that we fought together. Others, I mean, Angola had to be mowed down to really, because it was supporting us. The Quito of Guinovale, which was it was the height also of the apartheid regime, begin to feel the punishment of the African continent. It happened in Angola, and it created a certain momentum. The Frelimo rallies created so much excitement in the country. I mean, I was in grade 12 at the time in 74. So it created the excitement. We were looking at university tiros, and then by the time we went to university in 75, because I was first in 75 at TEFLOP, there was an environment because people had come back from 74. When 76 happened, by March already, we knew that things were just not well at home.
Let me try and get a story from you perhaps that has never been told. How old were you then? What grade were you in? And what exactly was it like?
No, I was second year at university, I was 20.
Right.
And yeah, so when the 76 broke out, we were at university, and immediately it spread. Not only it spread from Soweto, went to campuses, went to be back the next day. I mean, I was back home the very next day, because even at universities the fires just really went burning, and universities, to safeguard property, sent everybody home. When I got home in Pimville the next day, it was dead. I mean, you could feel the air of 76, because it went on for days, the looting, the marching, and other things. It went on for days. It didn't stop on the 16th.
I think, Minister, let's now talk about, the challenges here back home. Some of the major challenges that we're seeing, I mean, if we look at the statistics, we're talking about 15% of the population that is on drugs. Now, this, I guess, would be inclusive of what your department is grappling with in schools. These are the new challenges of young people in 2016, post-democracy. A huge number of them, the abuse of drugs, the abuse of alcohol. How challenging is it for your department to deal with some of these so-called new challenges?
We have a cohort of learners who are geared, and I always ask people not to lose the sight that we're getting kids who really are geared, kids who struggle for AIDS, the ones that we always celebrate. So we have that cohort of kids who are very geared, that we can see that there is a future for this country in them. But unfortunately, we also get a good number of kids who fall through the cracks, which is very sad. And it's kids from both extreme, and so you can't even say it's a poverty issue, because even kids from affluent families fall through this crack. We also find kids from poor families falling through these cracks, and it's very devastating both for parents, because it's drugs that we had never experienced before. It's adults who've never been able to, who've never really...
These are hard drugs.
Yeah, to be confronted with the problems that they're confronted with. If you interact with parents of kids who are hooked on drugs, you can see it finishes, it destroys their families, it destroys their parents. It just kills everything that is around the child. And it's quite sad, and even find that in our schools, our teachers are not trained to really deal with it. When we grew up, our generation...
You almost have to be a social worker and be a teacher.
And even understand what the child is going through, and understand how to help them out, and also see the signs as they're coming before they're even hooked, and see when kids are vulnerable, and which are things that, as educators, we're not trained for those things. We're trained to teach, not to help kids when they get into difficulties. But we find ourselves having to deal with it, because if it goes further and these kids get trapped into those drugs, sometimes it gets impossible to take them out, because I think for somebody it just becomes a spiraling effect that they can't get out of them easily.
Is this perhaps exacerbated by the scourge of HIV and AIDS? Because certainly, the scourge of HIV and AIDS has led to the increase in number of child-headed households. So these child-headed households are the very same children who are within these institutions, these schools, which you head. So I guess, it becomes a problem from one sector, which then culminates or moves into a space perhaps where you say these teachers have to deal with issues such as that as well.
That's one of them, and it's one of the major problems that are affecting our societies in terms of the scourge of AIDS and the effects thereof, where you find children called, how do you have a child-headed family? Children are children. They're supposed to be brought up by adults. So you have a very abnormal situation. But there's also quite a number of things. We have we're going through some social decadence of some form where there's just no respect for authority. I think coming from democracy, there are things that I think we missed off by saying there are bottom lines, there's authority, there's the structures, the systems. So we also have some social decadence, but you also have social challenges that are confronting our people. I mean, we were conversing before we started off, the kinds of poverty. You have really devastating form of poverty. When I grew up, people were poor, people who had patches on, but most of us were poor. So poverty was normal. But now,
everyone was poor. No one looking at the next one.
Actually, it was the rich ones which were vulnerable because there were very few of them and they got spoiled. And most of those kids from very affluent families didn't succeed to have been kids from poor because poverty was normal. But now we have a different environment where I think either because of the social context that our kids find themselves, they aspire for things that they don't have, feel bad if they can't get other things that they like to see or they see on TV. So it also brings another social context which makes it difficult for our kids to be strong and survive in that environment. So indeed it will be your health problems, the challenges that are brought by HIV and AIDS, poverty levels, and the urban migration, it creates lots of problems. You find kids in some of these informal settlements staying on their own.
But you know, most of these challenges that we see are those who bear the brunt of it all are those that are in the rural environment. Access is still one of the major issues when it comes to access to basic education. How is your department, I guess, dealing with that? Because I think we'd want to see a shift between 1976, a fight that was fought then for access, for equal treatment to your white counterparts, but we still see a great lack of that, primarily in the rural areas where, there's high unemployment levels, compounded again by a lack of access to almost everything.
I really don't want to be defensive about urban and rural divide. But urban poverty can also be very devastating. Because if you look at people in informal settlements, look at the conditions under which they live. You look at those informal settlements in the Eastern Cape, even here, highly dehumanizing people who live there. And even the self-esteem of those kids, their performance in school. So urban poverty can also be very devastating. And then again, as I said, it has health problems, there's social problems. In the morning, there's noise around you. There's just no space. There's no decent role models around you. Whereas in rural areas, indeed, there's lots of poverty in terms of distances, but it's clean. I mean, you go to these rural areas, go to rural areas in the Eastern Cape, it's pink buildings. So you can see that in terms of the quality of life, there is also quality of life. But where you are correct is, in terms of accessing facilities, I mean, look at the Eastern Cape. We still are far behind with infrastructure simply because the apartheid regime never built schools at all in the rural areas. So it's starting from scratch. Whereas in your urban areas, because they were creating an urban middle class, there were schools that we inherited.
Minister, unfortunately, that's all we've run. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much.
More about
certainly, absolutely. Yes, we'll certainly get an opportunity to speak a lot more about that once the official program gets underway. But certainly, we look forward to President Jacob Zuma's address on the successes and the challenges of young people today. But let's now take a look at an interview that was done slightly earlier with my colleague Dumaule Musaudi, who spoke to the Minister of Water and Sanitation, Nomvula Paula Mogonyane. And certainly let's hear what she has to say about the events of today.
All right. Minister Mogonyane, thank you very much for speaking to us on SABC News. 40 years on, is June 16 still as relevant as it's been in the past to South Africa?
No country must ever undermine its heritage, because if you do not appreciate the foundation, you'll not appreciate and celebrate where you are. So commemorating June 16, 1976 is quite important to honor those who today were standing on their shoulders, proudly so, because they knew that it takes a struggle for you to realize what you want. It is also quite important to share with the youth of today that the youth of 1976 determined what is it that they would want to be remembered with. The youth of 1986 created ungovernability And out of that, we reached a point of no return. 1994 was an assembly of South Africans out of the sacrifices of the youth of 1976. 2016, 40 years down the line, it is worth commemorating the sacrifices that have been made. It is worth celebrating that we have a government that is now founded on the basis of the demands and the clarion call that was made by the youth of 1976, including the educators and the church community that was behind the youth of 1976. And 1986, through the United Democratic Front, the Congress of South African Students, who called for parents, teachers, student associations. Let's celebrate today the youth of 2016. You have SGBs. The youth of 1976 was never listened to. The youth of 1986 was never listened to. The youth of today, you are part of the of shaping the future that you want to have.
As a caring government, we see that the youth also faces a lot of challenges. There's been the issues, especially for young women. You were a young woman involved in the struggle, sacrificing to make sure that this youth enjoys the freedom. Now we have the scourge or the phenomenon of blessers, all these things that are affecting especially young women. What would be your message to them today?
When some of us became activists for freedom, one of the things that we were taught was to fight triple oppression. That yes, we were oppressed as blacks, yes, we were oppressed as the majority of South Africans, but women, we were oppressed precisely because we are women. And that oppression is not yet over. Sometimes it can be done in a form of you being patronized. Be careful. You may think you are loved, and yet you are being used perpetually as an object and not genuinely loved. Love yourself before you can think somebody can love you. And you can only love yourself through knowledge, education, confidence, and your dignity, and refuse to be counted amongst those that are dependent to others.
Is the future looking bright for South Africa when we celebrate 40 years of that seminal moment in our history? 40 years forward, is South Africa going to be an even better place?
40 years from now, I'm quite determined. The situation of today will be different because today we're celebrating the first generation that is now in institutions of higher learning who have been beneficiaries of free basic education. 40 years down the line, they will be parents and leaders and possibly presidents who will be saying, I went to school in 1994 under Nelson Mandela in a free democratic South Africa. I then made a call to government that fees must fall, and my government listened. And today, I've acquired academic qualifications. I'm in charge of my destiny.
Thank you very much.
Well, my colleague Tumaole Mushaude, who's on a different side of the Orlando Stadium here on this 40th commemoration of the 1976